Week show with Jim Check and Ian Burns.
Welcome back to the Work Week. I'm Jim Check, obviously, with the nameplate there. You've spelled it right today. And Ian Burns on the other side of the screen there, all the way out in the nation's capital. Beautiful day here in the sunny Okanagan, although it's kind of like partly sunny here. Big weekend. Big weekend. Big, massive weekend here. And British Columbia has a new leader. Media Machine and the NDP are already hard at work, and we got some stuff to show you. Well, it's great. We actually put her in the really big salute as well, and for several reasons. Absolutely, you got to stick around to find out why. But the bigger news for sure in Canada is the harsh reality that we're facing. Ian and I talked about it last week. Hunger crisis actually in Canada here as 10% of the population now under the poverty line, and also 10% of the population in Toronto, Canada's greatest city, Canada's wealthiest city, now eating at the food bank. I mean, those are harsh realities that are really hard to hide from. And we got lots of data to show you on that. As always, we appreciate the feedback. We got a little bit to share with you as usual. There you go. It's on the screen there. And catalyze, that was Ian's. Catalyze the lexicon and get out the variable geometry. There you go, Ian. That's a T-shirt if I ever saw one.
That would be a good T-shirt. I like how you also use the British spelling of catalyze. That's attention to detail, that isn't it?
That is, right? That's a fan right there. Big show, great show, more like it. And then we got some other emails that were sent to me as well from people that are, some of the fighters for truth in Canada, saying that this show is bringing truth to Canada like nobody else. So that's what we work on. That's our thing. That's our thing. A lot of people don't like it. I wonder why. There must be a reason when you fight against the truth. But our headline today: harsh reality as Canada faces a hunger crisis. I mean, that is actually shameful, right? That is like crazy. And I put an analogy on there. Is like, it reminds me of the Toronto Maple Leafs under Harold Ballard. You may not remember all that stuff, but I mean, the storied Leafs. Everybody loved the Leafs. I mean, they still filled the stands, but they were just abysmal. And it seemed like the owner there, Harold Ballard, did everything he could to kind of destroy the Leafs, right? And it seems like the same thing goes on here in Canada. We have all these resources. Imagine a bench, and just I'll paint this analogy for you. Imagine a hockey bench. There's on the coaching staff. There's Mark Carney, obviously, Joe Lee as assistant coach, Francois Philippe Champagne, and a few of the other clowns in the upper office. And then on the bench, you have Danielle Smith, basically bench, sitting in the middle there, our greatest star, sitting in the middle, Scott Moe next to her. They don't get to see the ice. They're always suppressed. And you got David Eby, he's the goalie there, blocking everything, and he's just a sieve. And you got Wab Canoe, just like, who can I say that Wab Canoe's like? Just one of those irritating players out there, just chirp, not getting nothing done. And then you got Doug Ford, again, talking about how great he is, yet not getting anything done. Put the stars on the ice, man. Put the bloody stars on the ice. Let them play.
Wab Canoe is like a player that is trying to get a move. He's trying to get attention so he can get a big move.
Yeah.
That's mine.
And you got Alberta, like it's like Daniel Smith is like Wayne Gretzky says, trade me if you're not going to play me. Trade me if you're not going to play me. Anyway, here we go. Recession, Canada in a technical recession, and the media working bloody hard to kind of downplay this. It's like saying, like they say, well, it's a recession, but it's not, not such a bad recession. It's like your house is on fire, and they're saying, well, those flames are not the worst kind of flames that are burning the house down. I mean, those flames could be, if they were a slight shade of blue, they would be worse. But they're just trying to downplay this. But
or it's like saying, you've got technical cancer, but it's not like real cancer. It's okay. It's just technical cancer.
You're still going to die. But hey, it's not the worst kind of cancer. And Mark Carney yet to comment on the federal data showing Canada fell into recession for the first time since the pandemic. No excuse for it. And those figures were confirmed on Friday. I mean, we've been talking on this show for how long? All the leading indicators said we were going this way. The leading indicators show you the path. And inflation in the next report is probably not going to be good, right? Because all those energy prices are going to be in there. And that was one day after Mark Carney mistakenly told New York business leaders that Canada would have the second fastest growth in the G7 this year. The reality, slamming into the narrative, just head on, just a bloody crash, just as he says, the narrative, right? And that's what the media have done. They've basically given away any of their authority, any of their power over you, because they just continue to lie in the speeches, fake memoranda, discussion papers, announcements, paid media coverage, and other illusions will not reverse the damage or stop the economic hemorrhage. And that's from Pierre Poilievre, and we got a little bit from Poilievre later. As he says, I mean, he must have been watching our thing, because he's calling for an emergency meeting. That's what Ian and I said on last week, that there's a hunger crisis. What did you say? Call a meeting right now. There's an actual hunger crisis in Canada.
Well, do something in an urgent fashion, rather than just accept that this is part of life now. Oh, this is Canada in 2026. Like, of course, like 10% of the population is hungry and can't afford to buy food. It's like, sorry, I've got to go to this meeting with the Chinese foreign minister or something like that, or something even less important. But I just want to highlight something David Bale has said here. One of the comments. He said, CBC News this AM just talked international news like Gaza. I assume you're talking about the radio bulletin at 8 a.m., which is like the most listened to, or one of the most listened to products that the CBC puts out. But I mean, it was probably also true of the TV. But I listened to that radio bulletin, and it was about Lebanon, wasn't it? It was about Israel, bloody Israel and Lebanon. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
They're running cover
in a country like this, going through the problems we're going through, and the CBC tells us about bloody Lebanon.
No. Look over here. Look over here. House on fire. Look over here. Look over here.
Remarkable. But also this second line from this Blacklock story here, which you've already read it out, but one day after Carney mistakenly, it's an interesting way of putting it, told New York business leaders that Canada would have the second fastest growth in the G7 this year. I mean, we have to sort of... Blacklocks does this. They just report things in a very factual, dry fashion, don't they? It's quite good, actually, how they do it. But they're obviously making a point as well. But just in the sort of the commentary, from the commentary angle, I would just say we really have to point out that Mark Carney has a very, very strange relationship with the truth. He is outright deceptive a lot of the time, but if we're gonna go along with Blacklocks and say it was mistaken, he makes a lot of mistakes, doesn't he? He very, very frequently does not tell the truth, whether by accident or on purpose. And I think with a souring economy, relations with the US continuing to suffer, even though he said he was going to fix that, and the arrogance as well, all these things, you have to think they're going to coalesce into something very, very bad and smelly at some point for Mr. Carney, because these are some really negative attributes that he's displaying routinely now.
And come on, they know these things before he says it. Like, I mean, they know what the numbers are coming. If a couple of small town poor kid hacks like Ian and I could figure it out, and we've been talking about it for how long, they should be able to figure it out. We've been telegraphing this for quite a while. Again, come here for the future and the truth, and then we can debunk what they say later on as the results come in. And Mark Carney is now the only leader in the G7 to plunge his economy into a recession. Another first for the G7.
Yeah.
And there's lots.
Poilievre did a press conference
go back. Leave it there for a while.
Poilievre did a press conference just like an hour ago or something like that, and he started by listing the countries in the G7. Said, Italy not in recession, United States not.
Yeah, we got that.
United Kingdom.
We actually have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good. Sometimes I find that he protesteth too much sometimes a little bit, Pierre Poilievre, but I think that was very smart and very shrewd, because it rendered completely absurd and redundant and irrelevant all these claims about Canada's special circumstances, because it's not unique to Canada at all. In fact, it's far worse in, for example, the United Kingdom. And their growth is, I think, the highest in the G7 now, or second highest. Like, come on.
And to make matters worse, Canada has like a full house hand. Like it has the hand that they wish they could have. Do we have the hand? Like, when Trump talks about you don't have any of the cards, we actually literally have the cards. We refuse to play the cards. It's like we're throwing away the good cards. We're just like, and we go back to the hockey analogy, we won't let Danielle Smith on the ice. We keep blocking her. Well, David Eby continues to let goal after goal in the net. And then saying, like talking about, how great a goalie he is. He's the best goalie the world's ever seen. Is he?
But you talk about cards, being good and envious. Yeah, they're so good, and other countries are so envious that the likes of Germany come and get on their knees in the dirt and kiss the feet of the Canadian Prime Minister and beg for energy. Germany, which grew or was static in the last 3 quarters. Germany, that basket case of a country, basket case of an economy that's been battered from at least 3 sides. Germany, no energy, blew up their own energy generating facilities because they're so mental in Germany. They're so insane that they did that. And yet still their economy has grown faster than Canada's. I guess that's what economic genius gets you, doesn't it? So thank God we've got Carney.
There's a religion in Canada, and we're going to talk about that later as well, as they profess to be Catholics, but the only religion it looks like they adhere to is climate religion, as they suppress our natural wealth here in Canada. Like out of 195 countries, 6 in a technical recession. Here's our company we're keeping. Ready? Myanmar, Haiti, Venezuela, Yemen, and Guinea. Why not? Hey, sounds like a good company to keep. And then look what they have. What's that?
I'm just saying that's completely remarkable. Like, let's just talk through these countries. Myanmar, aka Burma, been suffering under a civil war for the last, 5-10 years, something like that, quite a long time. They're killing each other in a gruesome fashion. Not to mention, it's also a hermit kingdom that refuses to do any business with the rest of the world, and a bizarre military dictatorship. So yeah, all right, that makes sense. Haiti, is Haiti a country at this point, or is it several gangs hacking each other to death with machetes? That's a question. That's a genuine, legitimate question. So yeah, I can understand why Haiti's there. Venezuela, been living under a tin pot sort of semi-communist dictatorship for about 25 years. Okay, yeah, right, I get why they would be in recession. Yemen, talk about hunger crises. They've had one of the worst famines in modern history. A brutal civil war that continues to this day. The same question asked about Haiti can be asked about Yemen. Is it actually a country? Or is it a group of competing sides, none of which control enough of the country to call themselves legitimate? And then Equatorial Guinea. I mean, I must confess I don't really know much about Equatorial Guinea, but it's a small country in West Africa. So I can imagine that they have lots of problems. But just look at that, to be in that company. Canada. We talk about Canada's international reputation, don't we? What does that do for our international reputation to see the good old maple leaf there alongside those countries? Wow.
And then the sad part is, again, the media coming out and defending this is so vehemently. They're just tripping over themselves to say, oh, it's not so bad. I mean, it's been bad for a long time. Record bankruptcies that we just showed you, that 10% of the population under the poverty line. That's not even laughable. Half the people can't meet their monthly obligations now. We got a mortgage reset that's about to come into play. We got lots of mortgages that are now Canadian real estate getting wiped out. We had Joseph Barbuto on last week. Go watch that. Almost all the indicators, $1 trillion leaked south, and that includes also brain capital going south. And yet we get these narratives, like how many people can still believe what comes out of the government here and what comes out of the media here, this media protection plan. They have given away all their credibility, absolutely every bit of it. And here's a little clip here of them throwing away their credibility.
It's small, according to Stats Canada, but it is present, and it's not anything that economists wanted to see. 2 consecutive quarters is what we call a technical recession, when the economy shrinks, when there's a contraction in economic growth for 6 months consecutively, really. But when we say it's a technical recession, it's because there's also different ways to measure this. Do we compare it year over year? Do we compare it quarter over quarter? Do we compare it month to month? And needless to say, while we aren't seeing a lot of green arrows in these numbers, by some definitions, this is a technical recession. By some definitions, it's not. But there is not a lot of growth happening here. We are seeing some shrinking in the GDP, the gross domestic product. That's one of the ways that we measure how big the economy is.
That's good enough from that clown as he tries to explain it away. Again, the cancer, it's not a technical cancer as much as it's, it's going to kill you. And it's not that the fire in the house is burning it down. It's just, like the flames don't look as, the color that we would expect from a real fire. But is the house burning down? Yeah. Fools.
I would say, though, there's all this talk, by the way, about like technical recession, and they keep talking about definitions. They're talking about it, and I have this complaint about almost everything in economics. So you can apply this logic, I think, to most of economics. But they're talking about it as though it were physics. They're talking about it as though it were geometry, and not variable geometry, but real geometry. There's nothing in economics that's like that. Economics is not like physics. It's not science. So there is no true definition of a recession. That doesn't exist. It's just this boffin says this, this institution says this, and so on and so on. But generally speaking, the sort of slang, the word on the street, is that 2 quarters of a shrinking economy is a recession. I mean, generally speaking, that's one that just about everybody can agree on. But even that's not like I say, that's not geometry. That's not science. That's not physics. That's just, that's the slang. That's just what the squad generally believes. So this idea that you can talk about like, oh no, actually, because the square root of 24, no, it's nothing like that. Get the word technical out of there. It doesn't belong in there. There's nothing technical about it. It's just, in common parlance, it's a recession. As an average human being would understand, it's a recession. And that's pretty much all we need to know.
And here's the other part of this. This is just even more logic defying. Not all parts of the country are in this state. Alberta is actually banging away, like the engine's doing extremely well. So if you were the guy running the economic levers, if you were the guy running the levers, if you're in the background and you're pulling this lever and that lever, and you would look at who's performing, who should get more ice time? Who should get more ice time? Is it British Columbia that's underperforming, or is it Alberta? Put them on the ice because they're performing. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. There is Alberta and Saskatchewan performing, and they can hit above their weight class. They have constantly, and they're being suppressed. Imagine if you just took the shackles off of them. Yet we continue to virtue signal and do all this nonsense and give all this airtime. The media, again, is the biggest part of the problem here in Canada. The mainstream media. Come here for truth. Imagine if Canadians woke up to this every day and said, this is what's going on, this is what's wrong. But instead they wake up to this. Let's play this clip here.
Is facing tariffs?
No, this one here, affordability.
Affordability's the best it's been in over a decade.
Believe it? And now we can play the one from Pierre Poilievre that Ian was talking about earlier. Let's play that one.
France is facing tariffs and global economic uncertainty. France is not in a recession. The United Kingdom is facing tariffs and the global energy price increase, and the United Kingdom is not in recession. Germany and Italy are facing global economic effects and tariffs. They're not in recession. Japan is facing tariffs and the global economic economy. Japan is not in recession. The United States is obviously facing tariffs and global economic factors like high energy prices, and the United States is not in recession. So why is it that only Canada, after a year of Mark Carney, is in a recession today? Well, you could ask him that question, but he won't take any of your questions. He's hiding from you. It was Friday morning that we learned that Canada's economy was the only one in a recession, the only G7 economy. And what has Mark Carney done since? He's been in hiding. Oh, yes, he let you in for 30 seconds to have a little picture of him with the Chinese foreign minister. Then he hid for the rest of the weekend. Today, he's going to let you show up and take a picture of him wearing a hard hat and carrying a hammer around, pretending he's a carpenter. But he won't have time to take questions on how he created the only recession in the G7. Question period, where normally prime ministers go to answer, especially in a moment of crisis, when the economy has fallen into the only recession in the G7. You would expect him to be there, to be accountable, to show his incredible economic brilliance, but he's not showing up for question period either. While Canadians are starving, losing their jobs, and missing mortgage payments, and Mark Carney has created the only G7 economy in a recession, he is hiding from accountability.
My caller here is just driving me bananas here today, so I'm going to have to let it go. 112,000 job losses in the first 3 months of this year alone. Second highest unemployment rate in the G7. And we have youth unemployment here in Canada in some areas banging on the door of 20%, banging on the door of 20%. Youth unemployment. Still, well, temporary foreign workers are still being brought into this country. The economy shrank in 3 of the 4 quarters you've been in power. This is all from Poilievre. Business investment has fell another 0.7%. $1 trillion has leaked out of Canada. I mean, that is just crazy. The oil companies rather pay out dividends or invest elsewhere than in Canada. Canada has the highest household debt in the G7. Go watch that Barbudo interview. It's a must watch. And then the food bank stuff we've talked about. The numbers are absolutely appalling. Record bankruptcies there. We talked about that, I think, last week. There's people in BC, they say they won't open businesses in British Columbia. Yet David Eby also takes a stand and tells you how great British Columbia is as they talk about more windmills as they sit on tremendous wealth beneath our feet. It's just absolutely crazy as he blocks prosperity for Canada. We are basically blocking our own prosperity. Again, those other countries, France, Germany, the United Kingdom that Poilievre talked about, Ian talks about all the time, they are actual dumpster fires. They don't even have the energy. Canada has what they want. Yet we block it. It's I don't even know how it could be this bad. Like, it's puzzling. It's puzzling beyond belief that Canadians are putting up with it. That's the thing, right? Again, if they had the truth, because if you go on the apologist networks, they ran a piece. I watched it on Bloomberg this morning. I couldn't believe it. So they're just like, oh, Canada's in a technical recession. You know, like just technical, like that guy was saying. And then they went on into the streets and they interviewed a few people and asked, why do they think Canada's in a technical recession? And they interviewed 2 people that were saying it's not really, Carney's fault. And one said, well, it could be the government over the last 2 years, or it could be all the world factors. And that's where they ended it. Right? So they gave the excuse. They just let you have it, right? There was nothing about food banks. There was nothing about high unemployment. None of those things, none of those factors brought in the story. It was a polished job for the Liberal government. The media in Canada is absolutely fully compromised, other than this show. And again, if they showed up with $1.5 billion, Ian and I would be singing a different tune. We would sell our souls for sausage rolls. Well, $1.5 billion. Like that's it. Like, we're not taking less than $1.5 billion. But we'd give it all back to the Canadian people. So, clowns.
I feel like in a way that is almost a generous interpretation of Canada's media in itself, even though it sounds exceedingly harsh on the face of it. But I think another factor that you haven't mentioned there, and that isn't mentioned that often, is that these people, like, the people who are in front of Pierre Poilievre here, in front of Mark Carney, when he deigns to appear, aren't particularly smart. Sorry, guys, but like they don't really know what they're talking about.
They have no
So
idea.
they often just come out and say, "Oh, this expert just said," because they just don't know what they don't even know what they're talking. They don't understand the subject. They can't interrogate the claims themselves made by these experts. They can't even interrogate their motives. So they just come out and say, "Oh, this expert," like they're kind of being led without knowing where they're going. Really, I feel like a lot of the time it's a lack of sort of intelligence or intellectual depth, maybe, let's say. But they also just don't understand what the job of a journalist is. They don't understand this profession. They don't even understand the beginning of this profession, the beginning of what it is to be a journalist, which is to scrutinize claims made by powerful people, basically. I mean, there's not much more to it than that. But they only get excited and they only scrutinize one person, and it's this chap here.
Well, for the reporters out there that can't seem to figure out how to ask a question, watch our show on a regular basis. It'll give you questions. I think the conservatives watch our show because a lot of stuff we talk about shows up a few days later, which is great. So maybe you should watch and you can come up with some questions. And two, is there a liberal out there? This is the call out. Is there a liberal out there that will answer an email or come on our show? I mean, somebody must have courage to defend what's going on. It's not that hard. We do lots of interviews. We do lots of interviews with a lot of politicians. Very respectful. We just have some questions for you. Just some basic questions.
By the way, there was a question here. In this press conference, there was a question from a journalist who I can only assume has a horse in the race, who came, like, totally quite an odd one, but he just said, is it anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist? That was the question he put to Poilievre. And Poilievre dodged the question, I'm sorry to say, but I think it's because he was caught off guard by it. I don't doubt Poilievre's...
Well, again, they're trying to change gears, right? They're trying to change gears. When this is a crisis, like, do you not have a question on this crisis? Do you not care that 10% of the population in Toronto is at the food bank lineup, that 10% of Canadians are below the poverty line, that half Canadians can't meet their monthly obligation? That doesn't bother you? That unemployment rate for youth is near 20% in some areas of Canada, that temporary foreign workers still, I mean, you could go on and on and on and on. It could, you almost get tired. None of that. None of that. Just switch gears. Switch gears. They have to go.
And Israel, as usual, Israel's like such a great distraction, isn't it?
They have to go.
It's the ultimate distraction.
They absolutely have to go. This should be the headline story, and I just went to CBC to see. And then, of course, it's what BC court decision could be remote work, Amazon ending remote work. It's just clownish. Clowns. Absolute clowns. The distractors, the deceivers, the deception. And here it is, the Financial Post putting on a piece here, rate hike still expected this year despite latest GDP report. I'll tell you what, here's a forecast for you. If they do the rate hike, they might as well stick a fork in it and say it's done. That will be stagflation for Canada. If you choke an economy that's already choking, this is not an overheated economy. Raising the interest rate is to lower an overheated economy. This is far from an overheated economy. This is a dying economy. You want to see a currency crisis? You want to see stagflation? Do it. Do it. Clowns. I
wonder if, in those circumstances, I wonder if the Liberals and Mark Carney would start blaming the Bank of Canada. Because it would presumably
blame anybody, right?
Turn the economy into an even worse recession.
I mean, it's just nonsense, right? And then is a technical recession enough to spur the Bank of Canada to cut interest rates? If Sherlock Holmes would hear and Watson, he would say, you need to cut interest rates. You need to stoke this dying economy. Like somebody needs to put like some of that engine start. You know that stuff you can't get your lawnmower to start? Spray it in the carburetor. We need engine start. We need engine start. You need to put Daniel Smith on the ice. Scott Moe, put him on the ice. And bench David Eby. And bench Wab Canoe. The virtuous, those two of their campaigning. Well, Doug Ford, I don't know who has the title. The rest of them don't say much. Even Blanchette, like he's a star in his own mind, for sure. At least you know what you get with Blanchette.
Yeah, he's definitely a star in his own mind.
Families relying on food banks to survive. EI must be boosted. That's what I mean. If you push everybody down below the poverty line and everybody's just getting crumbs, is that the society Canada should be? Because it seems like that's where they want to get to, because they handed out those trinkets. Food Banks Canada has called for federal help as a warning that working families increasingly relying on donations and for food to survive. The charity said EI must be reformed to cope with the new reality of life in Canada. The underlying system has not been fully modernized for decades. EI was built at a time when full-time employment was the norm. The benefit should pay a minimum $450 a week. How do you live on $450 a week for a family anyway? The group said that people are unable to find a job when their EI expires should be granted extended benefits. Fix the economy. It's not hard. It's bloody not hard. It's like fix the economy, incentivize investment in capital, and not green, clean schemes, not like a $200 million Spaceballs debacle. Pipeline. That one's easy. That one's so bloody easy. Tell David Eby to call an election and let the British Columbian people decide whether he can continue to block this nation's prosperity, or if he should take a seat now. Do that. Terry Newman, who we've asked to come on the show, says she's coming on, so we'll wait for her. Mark Carney said it was in that speech there. Make America great again. Yet we're going to show you some stuff later. Well, that's still, you said on Friday, can they still go after it as a slur? Damn rights they can. We'll show you the proof of that. Damn rights they can.
They can do anything they want.
Damn rights they can. Let's play this here. Let's clip here.
Largest customer. We buy more goods from America than China, Japan, and Germany combined. Those common interests run through our supply chains, where 70% of Canadian exports are inputs to American cars, homes, aircraft, machinery, finished goods, creating hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. value add. They run through our energy partnership, where, at a time of a global energy crisis, Canada provides the United States with reliable power, with critical minerals that help fuel American growth. 99% of U.S. natural gas imports, 85% of electricity imports, 60% of crude oil imports. That is mutual strength. Let's be absolutely clear. Canada Strong will help make America great again.
Okay. A year
He
later,
even did that New World Order. Did that, didn't he?
Yeah. It's almost a year. You promised a deal July 1. It's almost another July 1. And now you're switching gears again. Like, I don't know, if I was on the American side, I wouldn't know who the heck you are. Like, one day, we don't need America. We'll replace America. We're joining Europe. We're doing this. We're doing that. We don't even want to be part of their defense thing. Blah, 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 blah. And then he goes down there. The man in the moment. Hey, the man in the moment. Make America great again.
But it's just intellectually inconsistent, isn't it? This is what I've complained about since the beginning with Mark Carney, and certainly with the Davos speech. He contradicts himself in that speech, as well as obviously the Davos speech. There's numerous occasions where he contradicts himself in the Davos speech. But in this one, he talks about, like, he brings out the old rupture bollocks again in that speech, and then goes on to say, oh, but we're going to make America great again. It's just such, like, crumbs. This is such, like, intellectual detritus that's been thrown at the peasants. It's just not satisfactory. I can't believe that anybody is sort of willingly and gratefully receiving these crumbs, just been asking for more. I mean, what the hell is this? It's about as sensible and consistent a speech that as values, the book Values, which is just a complete mess. It's almost like, you know, an undergraduate or something that has loads of ideas in his head, and he tries to put it down all in one essay, and it just comes out like a complete abomination. It's just like, you know, as you get older and better as a thinker and a writer, you're supposed to be able to consolidate your ideas and present them in a sensible way. What the hell are Mark Carney's ideas? Does anybody actually know? It's just such a mess.
Can you imagine if Pierre Poilievre switched gears like this on a constant basis? Man, the media would be just barbecuing him on a constant basis. I do want to take a second here, though. Brian Isted's going to join us at 11 o'clock. Brian Isted, former Army captain here in the Canadian Armed Forces. It was a great interview last time. He's going to join us. He's got some new information he wants to share with us. Again, he'll be joining us at 11 o'clock today. Here's this document reveals pipeline routes under consideration by Alberta. David Eby must be losing his mind, throwing shit around in his office and everything. Alberta looking at 3 oil pipeline routes through northern BC, and that's documents that CBC found, right? Potential routes include Observatory Inlet, Nasoga Gulf, Kitimat, and Prince Rupert as their final destinations. Well, one of the routes of the previously rejected Northern Gateway project. That's the one that Mark Carney himself testified in committee to kibosh. Mark Carney did that. So this economic malaise here that puts us at the mercy of the United States of America is at the feet of the Liberal Party, and Mark Carney's hands are not clean in that as well. He was economic advisor to Canada when he said there was no business case for LNG. And you've got to remember, we have to forgive Justin Trudeau because, you know, if he's in the Wizard of Oz, he's the one looking for the brain. So we have to forgive him. Where the other guy says he's the smartest guy in the room. So he should have known better.
Well, he also presents himself as this great prognosticator who can, like, see the future. You didn't see this coming, did you, Carney? Like, what the hell? He's not exactly Nostradamus. But I would say about... because we've got Heather Exner-Perot there, the tweet. She said something very interesting. Like, it's a hot take from her. Like, she does a lot of, like, instant reactions, which is very valuable, I think. But she would probably put an asterisk next to it. But she said it looks to her like they've chosen this route based on which jurisdictions, which, like, First Nations, they can actually work with. So it's going to be, I mean, if this ever even gets built in the first place, it's going to be more expensive and take a more convoluted route because of politics, basically, because the Canadian,
Welcome to
particularly
Canada.
the British Columbian system, political system, is such a mess that they're going to have to, like, dodge certain territory claimed or whatever it is, or, you know, owned by nations because they don't want it. Because they've complained about it. I mean, and so as a consequence, have to go through, like, much more expensive, like, go through mountains or something that they otherwise wouldn't have to go through. It's just, you know, it's that's self-harm, isn't it? This is what we talk about when we talk about Canada. Like, this amazing ability just to shoot ourselves in the foot, like, again and again and again and again.
So our pipeline will be more like a meandering river than an actual pipeline that looks at costs and expenses and a timeline. A meandering river that'll be over
Even though we're
budget,
at war.
over time. Yeah. And
remember that? Remember, we're at war. But this is what we're doing.
And our population is facing a hunger crisis. But hey, because you know why? The real reason is the climate agenda. The climate agenda that the media went whole hog into, and the Liberal Party and the NDP basically bought into hook, line, and sinker, and many of their investments are involved in it as well. Maybe that's why they're so stuck with it. We got a little flashback to our friend. We talk about him lots on the show when he told you shouldn't even drive in your car. The old Mark Holland. Let's play that little clip here, just to refresh your memory what nonsense spewed out of his mouth.
Good news, kids. You can take a summer fun time vacation where you're locked in a car for 10 consecutive days, nonstop with no bathroom breaks. And the Conservatives have a plan for you to have that summertime fun. And the cost? Give up the future of the planet, right? Don't worry, kids, about climate change. Don't worry about taking action on the planet. Enjoy your 10 hours in the car and let the planet burn.
What?
Notice how he's being applauded there by the Liberal MPs, who are still now in the House of Commons, but they clap for a different master now. I mean, it's appropriate that he's wearing that red bow tie, isn't it? Because he really, truly is a clown. That man. He is like an exotic specimen of a clown. He's the most expensive clown at the clown agency. You know, you get him for very, very special occasions.
He's the grand poobah of clown. And guess what? He left there and he went to work for the that big fair, I think in Canada, right? Isn't it that big fair or whatever, that playground? He's inviting people to come from across Canada to come there in their cars.
Oh yeah. I know, just what he's saying is so absurd, as if there is any connection whatsoever between a Canadian family or whatever driving around in a Winnebago and the end of the world. Or how did he phrase it? Like saving our planet or something.
And not one media
Can you
outlet.
believe that somebody in a position of responsibility could speak such falsities, such falsehoods in the House of Commons of all places?
And also, he basically accuses Canadian families of being abusive, that you wouldn't let your children out of the car to go take a bathroom break for 10 hours. Who does that? Do you do that, Mark Holland? Is that how you treat your children? Silly bugger.
I also enjoy that freeze, that still that's been chosen.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Looks a little bit like Charlie Chaplin in that movie. I've forgotten the name of that film now, but you know what I mean.
Even the California clowns. Hey, even the clowns in California are easing their carbon market rules. Hey, even the clowns in California has voted to give up as much as $4 billion worth of free allowances to oil refineries and industrial polluters to help them comply with greenhouse gases, right? I mean, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It kills the economy. As people with money are fleeing California, businesses fleeing California, they're seeing it. The amount of wealth pouring into states like Texas and Florida, now they're starting to whine, like the Democrats starting to complain. New York is losing its mind, that Mandami there, as people say, well, it's okay, keep it.
But also how remarkable that they managed to basically silence debate for quite a number of years on their radical, revolutionary economic policies, which is primarily what they were, economic policies. But they managed to silence the opposition by telling lies about the impending end of the world and trying to make it a moral emergency. I've said this about a few things, but I mean, this is really one of the big ones. We should never forgive these people. We should never, ever forgive somebody for such a gross.
We should never trust them again.
Is that such a crime? Such a horrible way to conduct yourself, to tell lies about the end of the world, scaring little children and gullible adults, so that you can avert scrutiny of your economic policies. That's sick.
The media in Canada, the legacy mainstream media in Canada owns a lot of this for a lot of different things as they became full-on proponents of a ruling party. And here's again, like there's a little knock on the door there. Canada's also rich in uranium. I've been a big believer in uranium. I've been investing in uranium stocks for a long time. Fukushima was a setback for uranium. But uranium is the future of baseload energy, clean energy. If you want clean energy and you want baseload energy, it's uranium. And Saskatchewan is one of the best places in the world to get some. We got some charts to show you here. Listen, nuclear power, clean and efficient. I just want to remind you that British Columbia has a moratorium on nuclear power. Moratorium on nuclear ships in their harbor. So if we ever want to have a strong military with nuclear ships, not on that coast. If you look at that, clean and efficiency, right? Nuclear is one of the most efficient electricity sources, delivering high output with minimal environmental impact. It's better than wind, better than hydro, better than biomass, better than natural gas, better than oil, coal.
It's loads better than wind. I can't believe the wind lobby has managed to
and better than solar.
Nuclear.
Look at that, better than solar. And yet, where's Mark Carney's company, Brookfield, through Westinghouse? Where are they building 8 nuclear reactors? All right, that's the United States of America. That country we're not supposed to go.
Did you not listen? He told you. He wants to make America great again.
Yeah, I heard that.
He admitted it. He admitted it in public. But I would just say about something that's often forgotten about nuclear, and always, I think, forgotten about solar and wind, is that nuclear is, go on Google Maps or something like that and type in a famous nuclear power plant near you, if there is one, and zoom in on it and look at the little square that it occupies. That's it. I mean, obviously there's a uranium mine in Saskatchewan or something. You can go and look at that as well if you want. But it's basically those two things. And then next to it, that's where they bury the nuclear waste, and then they put the cement in. That's like another little square. And that's nuclear power in terms of the space that it occupies. Then go to China or something like that, or the UK, and look at off the east coast of the UK. Look at their wind farms. Look how much space they occupy. Or look at Texas on Google Maps and look at the gigantic amount of land that they occupy to produce the same or even less energy and far less reliably. And you look at the solar in China, you look at like entire mountains and stuff, like entire hills just covered in solar panels. What do you think that does to the planet? Do you think the planet's happy about that? Do you think, the lizards and all the rest of it and the birds are pleased about that? That never seems to get factored into the debate. But wind and solar, it's like massive vandalization of your own land, of the earth, the thing that was supposed to be prioritizing here.
Why don't you come on, Mr. Evie and Mr. Dix, and defend it? Talk about it. Show us why your path is the best path, because you seem to be all in on wind and solar here. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Here's another chart here where some of this uranium can be found. Largest uranium producing countries: Kazakhstan, next door to Russia there, and then Canada.
Well, not only is it next door to Russia, but again, consult your globe or your map. It's a very landlocked country, exceedingly landlocked. So, you still obviously get hold of it, but it's hardly pure in that sense.
Nuclear power reliable. I'm just going to show you a couple of charts on nuclear power. 91%. That's in reliability over all the other ones. Like if you just look at that, just reliability, right? And then, like in another chart here, big tech has embraced nuclear power and pushing innovation down in the States. Yeah. I mean, actually, Meta's firing up 3 Mile Island. You go to the next chart. They're going to fire up 3 Mile Island. Remember that one that they closed in? I think the Simpsons kind of make a joke of it all the time. Meanwhile, in Canada. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. European Union. Swedish Prime Minister jokes about Canada joining the welcoming EU. Let's listen. Oh, we don't have the clip. That's too bad. I should have had the clip in there. He joined the European Union, joking about Canada joining the European Union. Ulf Kristersson, come from the mispronunciations, said Canada was the most Nordic country in the world outside the Nordics. It's not for me to say, but European Union is a very welcoming club. I guess they would welcome Canada so they could pilfer all of its resources and then also flood our country with stuff they don't want, as we'd have to take our quota, right? Our quota of dysfunction.
He also says something about, there's a problem of geography or something there, but like, we can figure it out kind of thing. And this idea that Canada's kind of like the Nordic nations, I don't know, maybe you can say that if you've never been to Canada or something. I don't know, but like, they'll go to any extent, won't they, to avoid saying the obvious, which is that Canada is very similar to another country. But we don't want to mention which country that is. We're not going to tell anyone. We're going to pretend that Canada is kind of like Finland, rather than the reality, which is that it's kind of like America.
Here's the religion. Here's Sean Fraser. Well, I've interviewed Sean Fraser in the past. When he was housing minister, he says as a former Catholic schoolboy, he would never enact legislation restricting freedom of religion. Yet you're still doing it. He spoke in defense of Bill C9, which is opposed by Catholic bishops, that would permit prosecution of hate speech based on the belief in religious text. Again, they say one thing, and their actions are different than what they say. And also, Sean Fraser. Let's remember, Sean Fraser was immigration minister. How'd you do on that file, Sean? And then he was housing minister. How's that file doing? Now he's completing the trifecta, as he's now the Attorney General of Canada here. How's that going? How's crime doing in Canada?
But I find this so tiresome when people wear their Catholicism as a badge. He says, I grew up in a Catholic family. I read scripture in church every week until I moved away from home. So he's basically saying, like, it's fine. Catholicism's like my thing. That's like mine, basically. So don't worry. I'm not gonna do anything mental in government. Which can you explain, please, Mr. Fraser? Which of the Catholic non-negotiables are you on board with? What about gay marriage? How do you feel about that? What about the role of women in society? What about abortion? What about assisted dying? What about all these things that you adopt the opposite view of the Catholic Church on? Do you know what I mean? And then they come out and say, "Oh no, I'm a Catholic. It's fine." Are you a Catholic? I mean, don't you have to like agree with the Pope to be a Catholic? Isn't that like rule number one? He disagrees with the Pope on basically everything.
Disheartening. And Mark Carney was down there talking about trying to downplay the Chinese EV thing too. He was down there in New York there saying, well, it's just a couple of cars, it's like, and it was like, they're mostly Teslas. Again, federal figures confirm cabinet granted Beijing the equivalent of half the battery electric vehicle market in Canada through 2031. The Minister of Industry downplayed the Chinese concessions as a small quota, but it's half the market, right? Cabinet in inquiry, ministry tabled in the Commons acknowledged that the agreement, you can put up that other chart there, guarantees initial access of 49,000 low-cost battery electric vehicles that will rise to 63,000 by 2031. And those are all numbers that can be changed, right? Like with the, those ones seem to get changed. It is a 51% of sales of all makes of battery electrics in the past 5 years. The average 123,000 annually. This is almost, again, self-harm. All the jobs that rely on the legacy automakers here in Canada said, don't do this. The Democrats in the United States says, don't do this. The Republicans in the United States don't do this. The automakers say, don't do this. The Japanese automakers that comprise about 70% of the autos here in Canada, Honda and Toyota, say, don't do this. Yet Canada, what are you talking about? We know best. Look at our economy.
But also, like, they know best as well about when they talk about this, like, tiny, tiny fraction of the car economy. Like, this is not a big deal. Even though all along the people who've actually looked at the numbers have been saying, this is a big deal. This is a massive chunk of the North Star of the car industry, according to Champagne. So this is an enormous deal. Like, the Chinese probably can't believe their luck. And they also got it, remember, through bullying. They bullied Canada, and they preyed on Canadian disunity, let's call it. They preyed on different regional priorities, and they attacked agriculture in the West so that they would, it could be squeezed till they cried about it. And that produced disunity in the country. And then Carney went there and gave them concessions. So they know that, like, to take a phrase from David Eby, they know that bad behavior will be rewarded. So all they have to do, if they're not happy with the quota, if they want to double it, let's say, all right, just put more tariffs on canola. We've got a spineless government that will give in, so Bob's your uncle.
What this will do, the first thing that you're going to see is lack of investment by the legacy automakers. That's what you're going to get out of this, right? They're going to say, well, Canada's, it's gone. So it's already happening, right? Stellantis. It's just so bloody obvious. And here's another one. The government warns Canadians to be vigilant when buying Chinese EVs. Data collected by electric vehicles could be used by hostile states to track people and carry out surveillance. Public Safety Canada has warned in an internal memo. So you got one side of the government, the Liberal government saying, oh, this is great. Electric and connected. And this is the future, the North Star. And the other side of the government saying like, whoa, like careful now. And we also have the American government say they're not crossing the border. Like you're not bringing these in for a day trip. The document written about Chinese vehicles that the Liberal government has allowed in Canada as part of the deal with Beijing warns Canadians to be vigilant when it comes to their security. And it also adds, opening our markets to new players can amplify presence of high-risk vendors, unauthorized access to data, connected vehicle systems can be used to establish patterns of life and conduct surveillance of sensitive areas. But hey, let's do it.
I mean, yeah, nothing new, is it? Like nothing we didn't already know. But there you are. The government. So the government, which is controlled by the Liberals, says, oh, you're going to have to be careful. Like, do your own research before you buy a Chinese EV, basically, is what they're saying. Like, we're warning you about that. But there didn't used to be any Chinese EVs until you, the Liberal Party, made it so by going to Beijing and kissing the feet of Xi Jinping. So what are you talking about? Like, what are you doing? Like, they didn't even used to be there. But now it's like, no, we're going to make that happen. So here they are. Here are the Chinese EVs because of us, the Liberal Party. But you better be careful, Canadian citizen, because these might be dangerous and they might take your data and they might have the ability to follow you around and, you know, get all kinds of private information about how you operate. And if you're somebody of power or influence or importance or something like that, they might use it and they might try and exploit it to God knows what end. Isn't that a bit nuts? Like, especially from a political party that is a fan of like safetyism, where it's like make everything safe. So don't even give people the opportunity in the first place. You know, like on guns, like don't even let people have these guns in the first place on the off chance that they screw up and shoot someone, or like they lose it and some nutcase gets hold of it. So why are they doing this? Why are they introducing danger into Canada and then just saying, do your due diligence? Are they libertarians all of a sudden? Again, talk about the intellectual inconsistency. Here, like, you know, he's chapter 350.
We're going to skip that next story, but we're going to go to demands, job site inspections. This is another one from Blacklock's there. Labor inspectors must ensure no illegal immigrants are working on the federal public works. And that's from Conservative MP Kyle Seebeck. Cabinet has admitted it does not know how many, if any, of the estimated 500,000 illegal immigrants in Canada are drawing wages in subsidized construction. They have no idea. Almost everything. Like, how many stories do we do on ministries or like sections of the federal government that have no idea what's going on? Don't do any performance indicators. Just no follow up. No outcomes. Don't know where people are. It's just absolutely crazy.
I'm sure all the unions are furious about this as well.
Yeah. And they just asked the question, how many skilled trade workers are employed in Canada in 2025? And the answer was 127,000, as they still hire illegal immigrants and temporary foreign workers and all that. I mean, that narrative, temporary foreign workers, that narrative that, you know, Canadians won't do the work, pay more, like at Tim Hortons and A&W and Telecom and all that. You just want cheap labor. You just want bloody cheap labor. And then Tim Hortons now trying to be defensive and saying, well, we're going to hire locals too, right? We're going to hire locals too. We still want those temporary foreign workers though. And here's Sylvain Chauban. We're not going to play. I'm butchered his name. Chablois.
I mean, that's one of the more unforgivable. Charlebois.
Charlebois. There you go, Charlebois.
I hope there's nobody from Quebec watching, because they're gonna be on your on your ass.
I'll be and the next time we go ask the professor to come on the show, he's going to say, "Is Jim still there?" He's just saying that we're not going to play the clip though. But Tim Hortons worried more about Dunkin' Donuts and their image now as Dunkin' Donuts comes to Canada, and and Tim Hortons saying we're Canadian. No, you're not, right? You're not. You haven't been Canadian for a long time. Dunkin' Donuts though is a U.S. company operated by a Canadian company. So Tim's have fallen far from where it came from. Here's your friend Jonathan Kay. And Globe and Mail admits failure in reporting those claims that 215 bodies found in Kamloops. It took them half a decade. But one of Canada's best-known newspapers has finally applied journalistic principles to one of the most contentious events in recent Canadian history. In a much-discussed editorial, the Toronto outlet uttered a basic fact that has been ignored by most of the Canadian press. 5 years after the startling announcement, there were hundreds of possible unmarked graves near a residential school in Kamloops. There has been no public confirmation of the discovery of any human remains. That's an extraordinary assertion, one that requires proof. And this is the one where even Holly Dones of Blacklocks reached out for the documentation. They wanted to seal the records. Was it 20 years they wanted to seal the records, something like that? And then she went to the court and asked them, and then the judge says, you got to turn over the documents. And what did she get? A black piece of paper. It was all redacted. So so there you go. There's the piece of paper covered in black ink. We had Jonathan Kay on the show. So he's got a nice, easy name. I can pronounce his name nice and easy. Don't forget, yeah. I come from Midway.
But well, it's ironic, isn't it? Because look, people can't pronounce your name. I find and people see your name written down.
So I'm just getting even. I'm just getting even.
Yeah, exactly. But I would just say on this, this was a travesty of journalism in the true sense of that word. A lot of people don't know what that word actually means, but this was a travesty. It was like an injustice, a mockery of journalism, of what journalism should be. Yeah. And it's were you going to say it still continues? Because yeah, it does. It still continues. It's like I don't. This is when this happened, and all the press was going along with it. I mean, at first, I have to admit, I also was kind of like, wow, okay, this is like a big deal. And I think it's understandable because the Kamloops band that revealed that information, that's an institution. That's a Canadian institution. And you expect Canadian institutions to be very careful about things like this. You don't expect this sort of thing to happen. And I certainly never expected that to happen. So I was like, wow, okay, this must be a big deal, And then as more time passed and no evidence was forthcoming, and then it started to get really cagey. The band became very cagey. There were no interviews. There was lots of money was given to them for the purposes of digs and things and investigations, and then nothing happened. It just kept on going and going and going and going.
Was that $12 billion or something like that? The numbers are
God knows. Yeah, a huge sum of money. Yeah. And then Justin Trudeau, of course, this is why he lowered the flag. The flags everywhere across Canada for 6 months, wasn't it? Were lowered. He started going on about genocide and talking about the children that never came home and things like Justin Trudeau went all in on this. The government's website, until recently, I don't know if it's still the case, but last time I checked, the official Government of Canada website talks about 215 graves or something like that, as if it's a fact.
Or maybe it's 12.
And yet,
million
as the Globe and Mail says, it's an extraordinary assertion and it requires proof. Yet we've never had proof. But so many people just turn, again, like it is with Carney, they just turn off the curiosity switch and it becomes more about conforming with the story as you kind of want it to be, as it should be. Like the evil Nazi Canadian colonial government, we must atone forever. Like that's what was wanted. So the story that was wanted was the story that they got, and that's no way to run a free society.
$12 million. This one here, one of our video interviews, got picked up by Zero Hedge. That guy's got a massive account on X, I think like over 2 million followers. So, and the article was with The interview was with Melissa Lansman. We were talking about Bill C-18 and freedom of press in Canada. And his headline is Canadian government crushing independent media with 2 sneaky policies. We know of one of those sneaky policies, do we not? Sneaky. Yeah, large corporate media outlets, and if you go read the article, large corporate media is able to survive because they get money to advertise and generate their own views. But it was the independents like us that really suffered because a lot of our traffic came from, I think 75% of our traffic at that time came from Facebook. So imagine that if you got 75% of your traffic cut off, and that's how you made your money. And we had some large government contracts, say, like that we had with, like BC Dairy and BC Lotteries, say, yeah, as soon as you get your meta back, we're there with you. Well, it's almost 3 years now, isn't it? Coming up on 3 years.
Yeah,
And
amazing how.
again, another first in the G7.
Yeah.
The first in the G7, the only G7 nation to block media on Facebook, even though they spend millions of dollars themselves on Facebook, because it's too important to ignore. You can't. I mean, the logic is defying. Like just like I don't know. Like how do you comprehend that? Like how do you square that circle?
But again, it's so low grade. It's so intellectually inconsistent. It makes no sense, and there's no attempt to expand because ultimately there's no scrutiny because the journalists are also like the journalists who are face to face with the people in power, they are just so intellectually incurious themselves. So they just kind of, bumbles along and nothing really happens. And they get to make these, like, obviously transparently stupid and inconsistent claims about things like Facebook and social media. And they're not scrutinized by it. They're not scrutinized about it by the press.
Well, I mean, I think they're going to have some work in the Premier's office here in British Columbia, as they're going to have to remove some of the large divots in the wall, as I'm sure there's some people throwing stuff around there in the Premier's office, as Carrie Lynn Finlay comes out of the back of the pack there to win. She actually won on the 4th ballot. She won on the 4th ballot. And so it was down to Caroline Elliott, Carrie Lynn Finlay, and Ian Black, the final 3. And the secondary votes for Ian Black swung the balance to Carrie Lynn Finlay in a razor thin win. I think it was on 51% for Carrie Lynn Finlay. And she is the former cabinet minister with Stephen Harper and a couple other things. And she won. And I just want to set this up. This is going to be, like, they're going to go after her hard. Like, I mean, they're going to go after, she is what you would call a true blue conservative in this race. Caroline Elliott was, I guess, the more moderate. And even David Eby kind of plugged her, right? Kind of plugged her when he said, when she didn't attend what he called the white supremacist news organization. And no media went after him for that either, right? They're just like, oh, that's okay. That's a competition. We don't care. But watch this clip and tell me what you think is what David Eby's war room is working on right now. That's good. Any thoughts?
She's a better dancer than Mark Carney's wife. I'll say that. Or Mark Carney himself. Actually, he also dances in that clip, doesn't he? But I'd say, you said the 51% thing. That is very tight, isn't it? And that's indicative of a lot of disagreement in the party, and that can be troublesome. That's going to be her first task, is to try and sort of cement her authority within the party, because that's a tricky one. I'm sure she would never have wanted it to be that way. Ideally you want more than 60%, don't you? But
she came out of nowhere though too, because the front runners. I mean, early on, the front runner was Millibar, which actually ended up finishing 5th, right? Peter Millibar, you and I interviewed him. I've interviewed him several times. He actually ended up finishing 5th. I think he tried to play it too safe. Like, he was very safe in his campaigning. And then Yuri Fulmar went full. Like he made that deal with Dallas Brody, which likely didn't do him much good. But I mean, he had a kind of a past that he was trying to fight back against too. I mean, he's an accomplished guy, but I don't think enough people knew him. And then Ian Black, former cabinet minister, I think, with the BC Liberals, and also I think he was the president of the Vancouver Board of Trade, and well-spoken. You and I interviewed him as well. He was a well-spoken guy, right? And then Caroline Elliott, obviously that's where most of the money was. Caroline Elliott's team raised a ton of money, and she had tons of endorsements. She had the former premier, Gordon Campbell there. I always like to say Glenn Campbell, but his brother Gordon Campbell. And then Stockwell Day, and then Dragon Star Den, Brett Wilson. Like, she had some big endorsements. And but she also was connected to the former BC Liberals. Brother-in-law was Kevin Falcon, which you and I have interviewed in the past. And then I think she was president of the BC Liberal Party as well. But she didn't have any experience in politics. I mean, Caroline Findlay, you know, she was an MP and also a cabinet minister. Let's listen to Findlay here and some of the stuff that she's promising British Columbia if she becomes premier. Go ahead.
Has treated the West like an afterthought. We've been overtaxed, overregulated, lectured, underrepresented, and ignored. British Columbians have been left behind by governments that use our resources as a piggy bank and our voices as an inconvenience. That ends now. A Findlay government will rebuild our economy, reinvigorate our historic resources of forestry, mining, agriculture, and fisheries, and seek to forge a strong Western alliance with Alberta and Saskatchewan. That alliance will be built on 5 pillars. We will work together to build new pipelines, refineries, and processing plants. We will champion an upgrade of the Trans-Canada Highway from Regina to Vancouver to freeway standards suitable for a G7 country.
She promised cuts the gas tax. So she did talk a lot to the people. I mean, a lot of the stuff that she's promised, I think Ian Black also promised to cut provincial taxes by 20%. She did talk a lot to the people. She's very similar. Obviously, the stuff's coming out already. Here's a congratulations from Harper himself. Congratulations to Carrie Lynn Findlay. And then obviously there's Peter Millibar actually conceding and being very gracious in his concession there. So Peter Millibar, a really good guy for sure, right? Even Caroline Elliott conceded there. You can see our Kelowna MLA there too, Christian Lowen in that group there. I think John Rustad was there somewhere. And she was a former Harper minister. She was the chief opposition whip for Poilievre, King's Council, and she is now the new leader of the BC Conservatives. And Andrew Scheer came out to congratulate her. And do you think the CBCs came out to congratulate her? Here's CBC with their first hit piece. Take it away, CBC. This one here. No, not that one. This one down here. This one. That one.
Position. Carrie Lynn, a veteran of federal politics, is now leading British Columbia's official opposition. Carrie Lynn Findlay won the BC Conservative leadership this weekend. Some say she's bringing a polarizing voice to provincial politics. And as Mira Bain shows us, it could signal a major shift in BC's political landscape.
It's a win that could make or break the BC Conservative Party.
Faith, family, and freedom. That's what it's all about.
Carrie Lynn Findlay is the provincial party's new leader, and she's championing a right-wing populist message. The veteran federal politician won narrowly on the 4th ballot, taking 51% of the vote, campaigning hard for resource development.
Our province will become strong. Good-paying jobs, modern infrastructure, resource wealth, an opportunity that has been blocked by the NDP.
A night of celebration transitioned Sunday into their first caucus meeting. Party unity, despite rumors of deep divisions.
That's good enough.
Well, are you
CBC.
staying?
Did they ever start with David Eby, left-wing extremist policies? Did they ever start with that when they start doing pieces like that on the NDP here in British Columbia? Have you heard them do that yet?
Canadian Press interviewed a scholar, somebody from a university, I think in Victoria, something like that, who was referring to Carrie Findlay as being a populist and sort of implying that she was like further right, almost on the verge of the crazy right. But it is very interesting, isn't it, that they never mention that David Eby's politics, his policies, are fringe in many cases, like the decriminalization and the attitude to crime. That was fringe, like extraordinarily fringe. His attitude to a pipeline, fringe, totally fringe.
Against
and
the
fossil
wishes of
fuels
all
in general.
Canadians.
Yeah, I mean, he is, and talk about divisive. They've used the word divisive a lot to describe Findlay. Is there a more divisive politician in Canada than David Eby? You know,
Well,
he's invidious, isn't he? He divides the whole country, the whole of BC. He divides everything so that he can put himself in the middle as the rational, nice guy. David Eby is an extremist in many, many ways. He also has been very friendly with and done business with the Green Party of BC, which is undeniably, by definition, fringe and extreme. So he is an extreme, he supports extremist policies himself, fringe policies, is undeniably, by the very definition, as a divisive politician. And he's also allied with extremists. That's a way to describe David Eby, but where do you think you'll ever hear that description?
NDP didn't come out with a congratulations, but they did come out with a hit piece already. Even Conservative MLAs don't support Carrie Findlay and her Trump-style politics right away. Like in the first sentence, that dance, eh? The dance, like, boom, trumped her right there. Hey, she attacked the family of Conservative MLA Peter Millibar. So they hit her with the Trump, like right out of the gate. That's the card they're going to play.
Yeah, I mean, you would though, wouldn't you? It's so easy. You don't have to think. You can just do it. And they've also like jumped on that comment there. You see the second sentence. She attacked the family of Conservative MLA Peter Millibar just because they're Indigenous. No, that is fake news. Repeated by, I mean, this is a political party that despises Carrie Findlay. They're obviously going to lie about it. Okay, that's kind of understandable. I'll almost give them a pass. But the media, a lot of the media in BC, such as it is, I mean, it's absolutely pathetic state of affairs in the BC media. But they've been trotting that out as if that's what she said. And they've been saying she accused Peter Millibar of a conflict of interest because his wife is Indigenous. No, she didn't. She did not do that. Listen to what she said. It's because his wife works for the Kamloops Indian band. That's what she said. That's not the same thing as because she's Indigenous, is it? You know, again, like, are we going to be even slightly serious? Those are two very different things. Working for and being, you know, they're different things. It's not about her ethnic identity. She was making the claim based on her employer. I just thought I would chuck that out there. But I mean, that's just that's the first lie. That's never going to go away, I don't think. Her husband also said something about Palestinians or something, didn't he? That'll be resurrected for sure. And then the Trump stuff. The Trump stuff is just like, just throw it at the wall and see if it sticks, basically, isn't it? Why not? Have a go. It's probably worth it, isn't it? Because they've seen the success of Carney, the success of Doug Ford. I mean, why not? You know, it's like a free hit, isn't it? So they're going to do that for sure. But having said all that, and in defense of the truth there, which happens to be on the side of Carrie Findlay on this occasion, I'd also just point out, in purely sort of political terms, I don't know if she's going to work on the electorate in BC. Like, I think that remains to be seen. I don't know if that's a slam dunk, because the electorate in BC is quite interesting, isn't it? To say the least, it's quite. I mean, I'm saying particularly the Lower Mainland. It's a very different electorate. So I don't know if she's going to be, I don't know if she's going to sell to them, but we'll have to see, I guess.
There was reaction also from Eleanor Sturko. We've interviewed Eleanor Sturko in the past. She left the BC Conservative Party, where it's kicked out by Rustad, actually, kicked out by John Rustad. And she had in her tweet there, the results of last night's BC Conservative leadership race has left a void in the political landscape for those who are looking for an alternative to the NDP incompetence. And she said, I feel strongly that British Columbia, I don't have it, it's not in the thing, feel that it's best served when represented by a government that has values, broad perspectives, and stays away from polarizing extremes. So, I mean, she's got some work cut out for her, right? So, because you and I interviewed Jonathan Kay, and he said that Canada, or British Columbia, needs a Stephen or Stephanie Harper, and there's Stephanie Harper there. She's got the blessing of Stephen Harper. Can she unite the fractures? Because there's quite a few fractures. There's absolutely quite a few fractures in Rustad's Conservatives with, I don't know, I'm not sure if whoever won, maybe Ian Black would have been the one to mend the fences, because I think a lot of people thought Caroline Elliott was too far to the left. And then I don't know, like I don't know if there was a right way or a wrong way on this, but Carrie Lynn Finlay, though, for sure is close to Stephen Harper, and it's got to be worrying even to Mark Carney, because all of a sudden you got Daniel Smith, Scott Moe, and if Carrie Lynn Finlay gets the premiership here in British Columbia, the West looks pretty tough. The West looks tougher together. And then Wab Kinew will be standing there by himself, wondering, well, what the heck he's doing. But if she becomes Premier of British Columbia, it'll be a tough sell to steamroll the West, I think. Because Scott Moe doesn't budge. Like you said, he didn't even pay the carbon taxes. Trudeau says, you pay those carbon taxes. Scott's like, no, not paying that.
I'd also say, like, there are many things in favor of the BC Conservatives, aren't there? Like, the NDP's been in power for ages now, and things aren't going particularly well by the basic statistical measures of economic affairs, but also in terms of land claims and social policies, drugs and things like that. I mean, like, things aren't generally going very well, are they? And then there's what our good chum, whose name I've somehow forgotten, who we had on last week. It will come back. The Economist.
Joseph Barbudo?
Joseph Barbudo. I'm very bad with names, by the way. Some people comment and say like that I have a good memory. Not for people's names.
Some people say I mispronounce all the names, and that's true. That's a fact.
Yeah, I just forget them. So I don't have that problem. I just forget them. But as he said when he's talking about Carney, like, the incumbent power, when there's some kind of economic or financial crash, so to speak, like when the economy's gone really bad, the incumbent power is just kind of doomed. So I do feel like there's a bit of that going on. And you also have to remember, it's David Eby. Like, David Eby's not exactly Barack Obama, is he? He's not like a really popular, individually popular politician who can, like, drag or Mark Carney for that matter. He's not like Mark Carney. He's kind of a bit of a drag on the NDP in many ways, you could argue. So as things stand, if the NDP are going to keep David Eby, she's got every chance, surely, hasn't she? It's sort of like, she's not exactly going up against Muhammad Ali in his prime, is she?
When there's not enough food to put on the table, the choice is you have to leave the ideology behind. And you have to start thinking, like, who's going to put food on my table? And it sure ain't David Eby and Adrian Dix. It sure ain't them. They're going to keep sticking their hand in your pocket, and they show that time and time again. They just stick their hand in your pocket. And,
People get sick as well. They get sick of a party that's been in power for ages, and they sort of lash out and say, go away. They just try and dismiss them. That's a feature of democratic politics. So, yeah, you got to feel like the NDP's time's running out. I think.
There was a congratulations from Pierre Poilievre. I even think David Eby sent something nice, but then his party quickly hit her in the face right away. But He did. David Eby did congratulate her, but not the party. And then I don't know if I saw anything from Mark Carney yet, but it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But interesting for sure. She has quite a few. Again, if you look at her resume, you know, she was in Stephen Harper's. If you're looking for a true conservative, she was in Harper's, the last, you know, party in power conservatives that did a lot of good stuff for Canada. We had the richest middle class in the world, And we got to remember the Harper government gave Canadians the TFSA. One of the best things you can take advantage of, if you haven't taken advantage of TFSA, you should, is one of the best things to have. I don't know what the Liberals have given Canadians as something you can look back as a legacy piece other than free pot and decriminalization. I have no idea. COVID shock?
I mean, Chinese Communist Party is quite pleased. Got a massive contract to build ferries. But it's true, you've got to have something, haven't you? And it's funny that you mentioned that about TFSA and like that's associated with Harper. Because I was
cut the GST by 2 points. He cut the GST by 2 points.
Yeah. I mean, there's Harper's, there's loads with Harper, isn't there? It's not quite the same. But I was thinking about, I was driving around in an automobile in the fair.
Were you allowed? Mark Holland? Did Mark Holland phone you up, scream at you?
He was on the street, wagging his finger. But in the fair province of Ontario, and driving past where a speed camera used to be, just pure malice, vindictive, horrible piece of kit. And obviously, Doug Ford got rid of that. And I sort of went past it, and I was just like, "Cheers, Doug." You know, like sometimes if you just do one good thing, people will remember. But I mean, I'm being quite cheeky there because loads of people are unhappy about that, about the speed cameras being removed. I don't know why they're unhappy, but yeah, do one good thing. David Eby, it might have been that $1,000 that he promised everybody, but he turned that into a bad thing, didn't he? Because he didn't deliver.
Here you go. Nah, just kidding. That's not when a kid sticks out his hand. Here you go. No, sucker. Yeah, sucker. There you go. Anyway, the TFSA, one of the biggest things that's been year over year. That is one of the things that you should get your kids to take advantage of. Open up a Wealth Simple account. Go to the reallybigshow.ca. There's a link there. You can get yourself $25. Take advantage of it. TFSA, one of the best things ever. Again, I don't know what the Trudeau era gave Canadians, and right now, Mark Carney, a year later. Do you have Julie as what we got so far?
The studies show that the industrial carbon price adds zero.
That's what we got so far. There you go.
She's someone else, isn't she? It's the voice. I don't know what that, like the way she speaks.
Let's be patient. What we did get is the definition of incompetence. We got that in spades. We got Gary. We got Lena. We got Jolie. We got Julie. We got Freeland. We got Champagne. Holland. Stop me when you have one that you can debate that's actually really strong. Like, you know what I mean? LeBlanc. Actually, no, LeBlanc's more than that. McKinnon. Oh my God. LeBlanc is actually probably one you could say it's like, you know, it seems like, you know, the guy deserves to have a job. I don't know if that's the job
he can be a little bit of a sort of sourpuss, though. He can be a little bit sassy.
Nand,
sometimes.
Nand, talk about way out of her depth level. Fraser,
yeah,
nice guy. Interviewed him, nice guy. Just completely, going for the trifecta.
Champagne at least knows how to speak, sound excited. He knows how to be enthusiastic.
He missed his calling as the guy with the top hat there in the middle of a 3-ring circus. That's his calling. There was a journalist there, a former global journalist. I think a 25-year journalist got fired during COVID there, and she caused a kerfuffle. Her name is Anita Krishna, and she got escorted out by the police. They grabbed her by the wrist. A couple of cops walked her out. They said that There's a lot. I mean, New Westminster Times is following it. They said that she was drunk, and then there was allegations she said she's not. And but she definitely has an axe to grind with Global there. But you can go follow that if you want. It's kind of more of a gossipy thing. Elon Musk put this thing on God's side. We're trying to get God on the show. This is an interesting quote. Elon likes it, though. The only thing that stops violent men from raping you in your society are other men who are equally willing to be violent in stopping the rapist. That's true, right? And I agree with Elon there. Law and order, right? Otherwise, it's a free-for-all.
Very Hobbesian perspective.
Right? Otherwise, it's a free-for-all. And in some places in the UK, it has become a free-for-all. Some people get a free pass, and you can't even say anything about it. Because if you say something about it, obviously you deserve to be put in a timeout. Get free lunch, free breakfast, free dinner, and a bunkmate.
But no, this is like vulgarized Thomas Hobbes, the philosopher. The philosopher Thomas Hobbes, who everybody should have a little bit of familiarity with, I think. And it's hard to argue against, isn't it, really, when you see anarchy and in one form or another around the world. The result is not good, is it? It's almost never good. So I think there is a lot of truth to that.
Someone calling me out on my LeBlanc things and bite my tongue on LeBlanc. Well, I'll just say, Chris, like, I did say not that job. And I just said in the other sea of incompetence, he's like better than that sea of incompetence. Like, I mean, they're next level. Like Gary is like next level incompetent. How he still has a job shows you Mark Carney's management style. It shows you how Mark Carney never fired even the guy that until the RCMP showed up, that Mark Carney doesn't remove people. Like, I don't know, like it's a leadership style I don't understand. I don't understand it one little bit. Look at this, and this is another example of how good Teslas are. This Tesla Model 3 plunged 300 feet off a Malibu cliff. 2 passengers survived with moderate injuries. Tesla makes the safest vehicles. There was another one in California where the doctor drove his wife, and his 2 kids over the cliff. I think it was about a 200-foot drop, like straight drop. And the firemen are going down there just like, man, it's going to be ugly, right? Getting the bodies out of there. Scratches. And then the guy said it was self-drive, drove off the cliff, and his wife said, that's a lie. You did it. You tried to kill us. Tesla's some of the safest vehicles on this planet. And have you ever heard of a car company that tries to make their cars more affordable all the time? Like right now, there's a pop-in deal in Canada for the Model 3. I think it's $39,000 or something like that on the website there.
Yeah, it was last time I looked.
That's that car right there at the bottom of the canyon. So we got a really big salute there for you. We got the big salute. And we're going to play the big salute. The tip of the hat to the new dancing queen that's going to beat out Olivia Chow. You got it? I think she should troll David Eby, and she should do it to YMCA.
She should challenge him to a dance-off.
Just own it. Like, it's funny. It's funny. They're going to pick on her. I guarantee they're going to go after her for dancing, and yet they're going to ignore Olivia Chow's dancing almost all the time, right? They're going to ignore that. Never said a word. And if you want to talk about clowns in cabinet in legislature, barking. If you're the premier and you're barking while the opposition is talking, you're literally barking like a dog. We showed that last week there, where Wab Canoe was literally barking while the opposition was trying to make a point. Barking. And we watched the BC legislature, and it's almost like a clown show too. So there's like, it's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Anyway. This day in history is going to wrap things up. So we're going to end up taking a break, and we're going to come back with Brian Isted at 11. But we're just going to go through some. And Some of this day in history on June 1. It's June. Can you believe it's June already?
I can't.
If you like what we do, though, please share this far and wide. Share it wherever you can. Bring friends. Have watch parties. If you can contribute, great. If you can join and become a member, all these things. We're getting lots and lots of people saying that this is the only place for truth. We try to bring you truth. We try to bring it with a little bit of humor, obviously. And it's, we bring our thoughts and opinions into it for sure because it's a news commentary show. That's what it is. We're not just reading the news, it's a news commentary show. And we bring facts. We spit facts, basically. Spit the bloody facts. And we're getting some really good interviews and tons of good interviews. We reorganized our homepage on YouTube there. So they're putting some of the must-watch videos. You can go on there and you can take a look. You can pull that up so people can see that. Pull up the homepage for the really big show. And our X account is starting to get really a lot of traction as well. If you put, can you bring that up? There you go. So they, on the top now, we're putting is that the homepage? That's showing the latest though, right? Like home, there you go. Yeah, so that's showing spotlight videos. There you go. So the spotlight videos, the interviews that we would recommend that you go watch, and then our live streams, and then the shorts, and then, there's categories so you can go find stuff, right? So if you're unfamiliar with that, you can go through that. But on this day in history, 1967, I think I was a 5-year-old little lad then, the Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Great song.
You love it.
Great band, right? I mean, great album. Yeah.
Album.
That thing. You remember albums used to be the coolest things. Albums used to be the coolest thing. I remember the Led Zeppelin one where you poured water on it and changed colors or something like that. It was pretty wild. Album covers were like art. There was so much creativity that went into album covers. Marilyn Monroe.
This album, that album in general was just a masterwork, really. That was Paul McCartney's finest hour, in my view. He sort of put that all together and captained the ship.
When do Ian and Jim go full Alex Jones? Never. How's that?
I could never be that funny. I'm sorry. I'm not capable of that kind of comedic timing.
Marilyn Monroe. Classy. Classy. Red dress over the grate, right? Who can't forget that? And here's your friend, Genghis Khan and the Mongols sack Peking, now Beijing.
It's the same city. That's just pronunciation. Your favorite subject.
And here it is. Yeah, I'm going to let you do it because I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it because I know I'm going to get it wrong. Do it.
What, Anne Boleyn?
There you go, Anne Boleyn.
What did you say last time? Boylan?
That's what I said. Boyle. Well, read it.
Boylan. Like a New York private detective. Where's that Anne Boleyn?
Where's that Anne the Boyle? She's crowned Queen of England. Who's the fat guy there with the big jacket there? Is that King Henry or what?
That's Henry VIII, indeed.
Big jacket.
And she's the mother, or was the mother, of Elizabeth I. But she didn't last very long. Old Anne ended up getting her head sliced off.
And here's your friends, the Brits and the French, fighting it away there. 1794, the French Revolutionary War. See, that's not that long ago, right? People think that wars don't happen anymore. I mean, obviously, they do. Ukraine war, the Iran thing. But I mean, we had a bloodier past for sure, and like major skirmishes. But obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about our military readiness here in Canada. We've got a little comedy for you, though, too. Oh, yeah, the Memorial Cup. I think the Ontario team won the Mem Cup here in Kelowna. Was it Kitchener? Kitchener Rangers? Is that correct, Ian?
No, it was some other team, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, it was the Rangers, yeah. Rangers beat the Silver Tips. I was thinking about the Silver Tips. So there you go. It was the Rangers.
Kelowna didn't do so well in that tournament. Kelowna, yeah. Here's one here. Norway wins its first ever medal at the top tier men's hockey tournament. Canada can't even win at that level. Yikes, because that's the guy in net. Remember that creepy thing when he went and did that? Just like, okay.
Look at that strange face.
Okay. Yikes. Put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. That's what Danielle Smith's saying. Like, Canadians starving. Put me in, coach. Come on. Mark Holland screaming, don't do it. Don't do it. David Eby, don't do it. Look, I'll stop all the pucks. Is he here already? Yes. Well, if he's here, we might as well continue on then. So we'll go to a break here. We'll just put on our intermission thing while we bring Brian in. How's that? He's early, but we might as well do it then. We'll get her out of the way here. So stick around. It'll probably be like 30 seconds to a minute, and we'll be back with Brian Isted. Well, welcome back, Mr. Isted.
Thank you, sir. Is my audio okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Right on, first try.
I like the hat, and I like the old Canadiana lumberjack shirt there you got going on.
Yeah, I showed up 15 minutes early because I wanted to watch the show, and then you guys denied me the show and right to this, so I feel a little bit ripped off.
Well, we were wrapping up actually. We were actually wrapping up. And
we were talking about Henry VIII, so we were scraping the bottom of the barrel, I think, at that point.
A real barn burner I missed out on here.
Oh, we had Mark Carney playing net too, so that wasn't really going that far either. So.
Oh, right on.
Well, thanks for joining us again. Your last interview has done really well, and obviously people are really interested. Lots of really great comments as well on that interview, and some of the stuff you shared, like some of the stuff that people still can't believe. One of those, not enough pistols. We can talk about the MPs. And that the entire Canadian military is smaller than the NYPD. I think those are just some of the big facts. And then we talked about some of the accommodations, the living accommodations. And then you touched on the mercenaries that are now part of the Canadian military. And then you sent me this long email, which really articulated a lot more on this new recruitment strategy that Canada has set up. Maybe you could set that up for us and just talk about this recruitment strategy and what that means to the Canadian Armed Forces and how we can work with other NATO members.
Yeah, it's probably the least exciting information, but very important information. So I just hope people kind of bear with me while I'm going through my notes here to make sure I articulate this properly. Let me just pull this up here. Just bear with me 1 second. Did you lose me at all? Am I still there?
Yeah, you're still here.
Okay. Oh, forgive me. Sorry, this is what happens with live. Okay, so what Jim just mentioned there is a thing called ITAR. So what is ITAR? So America has spent trillions of dollars developing the most advanced military technology in the world. We're talking jets, missiles, encrypted comms, night vision, targeting software, everything you can think of under the sun. So to protect that technology, the US created a strict rule book in 1976 called ITAR, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, authorized by Congress through the Arms Export Control Act. The core rule is simple: American military technology is for Americans. Everyone else needs specific written permission from the US government before they can touch it, see it, or even be in a position where they could theoretically access it. ITAR is managed by the State Department, who also controls immigration, customs enforcement, and the FBI. Consequences for violations are severe. Companies have been fined hundreds of millions of dollars. People have gone to prison. I believe his name was Chi Mack. He went to jail for 24 years. The most critical concept, so this is where it starts to get real sort of interesting, the strict liability. So most laws require proof of intent. ITAR does not. So what does that mean? So strict liability means if the prohibited thing happened, you're responsible, period. Intent, ignorance, and good faith provide zero legal protection. Even theoretical access counts. So a foreign national does not have to actually open a file or touch equipment. Simply being in a position where they could have is enough to constitute a violation. This is the most dangerous aspect of ITAR. A well-intentioned mistake carries exactly the same legal weight as a deliberate act. So Canada has a special privileged position since 1954 in the agreement. So we have the most privileged position of any country in the world under ITAR, built through 70 years of deep military partnership with the US. Formalized in 1954 through defense production sharing arrangements, this resulted in a specific legal carve-out directly into ITAR, 22 CFR section 126.5, in case anyone wants to look this up. It's called the Canadian exemption. The exemption means most American military technology can flow to Canada without requiring an individual export license, something almost no other country in the world has. It's the invisible infrastructure that makes the Canadian military function. Virtually all CAF equipment, systems, and platforms contain American military technology, and without this exemption, using any of it would require lengthy individual authorization every single time. The exemption is powerful but conditional. It only applies to Canadian nationals and permanent residents who do not have ties to countries the US considers a threat, such as China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, etc. So what is Canada now doing? Facing a severe personnel shortage, Canada opened CAF recruitment to permanent residents in 2022, and in 2026 launched a dedicated immigration pathway targeting skilled military foreign recruitment members, including pilots, cyber specialists, technical trades, etc. There's actually a lot more. I could look it up and dive into specifics later, but roughly 1 in 5 new CAF recruits is now a permanent resident, not a citizen, making up approximately 1,400 people in about the last year. While NATO origin recruits are preferred, the program extends broadly to any recognized foreign military, including countries that are not US allies. Recruits begin basic training on reliability status alone, a basic background check with full security clearances processed afterward, meaning foreign nationals enter operational environments before their clearance is fully resolved. The direct collision with, is there any questions so far? Am I moving too quick?
Yeah, no, I guess the crux of it is that it's literally we're hiring foreign mercenaries, for lack of a better word, that aren't Canadian nationals, which puts this ITAR thing at risk, right? Because I mean, they're not authorized to access this type of equipment, whether that be, you know, I'm just going to use like night vision goggles. I'm not sure if that's in there, but you know, jets and stuff like that. So, and then because obviously, if there's a Chinese national in there and they get access, and all of a sudden they could take that technology and take it back to their home country, and that's what America is trying to protect against, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Night vision is a perfect example because a company called ITT was fined $100 million for exporting night vision technology to China. And again, whether it happened intentionally, accidentally, none of that matters. The strict liability is if a person is in a building where technology or equipment or even, for instance, like the F-35 is American technology fighter jet, the maintenance manual of the F-35 is also included under ITAR. So it's not just the equipment, it's not just the technology, it's not just the weapon systems or anything like that. Even just the schematics or maintenance guidelines and policies for this stuff is also included. So you can imagine how problematic that is to have.
Would just be basically the blueprints, right? They basically just tell you
including
how the
building
jet
blueprints.
operates, right? Yeah.
And I don't want to say that Canada doesn't take top secret security clearances and things like that seriously. And I'll give a personal example. So when I was posted to Ottawa in 2017, I was posted to a position that needed an above top secret security clearance. So you have TSSA and then all the other acronyms that go along with that. Top secret, special access, a bunch of things. So I was posted to a place I did not yet have this access. This clearance requires about a year's worth of due diligence from the people in the background who spooled that up. I was not allowed in the building that I was posted to for almost an entire year, where I had to show up and then go into the officers' mess and listen to old crusty dudes tell war stories at 10 in the morning eating popcorn in the bar, because I literally was not allowed in the building. So the Canadian Armed Forces does know about this stuff. They do take it seriously. It is something that's tracked and handled appropriately. But this oversight or negligence of bringing in folks from countries that aren't a part of NATO or might have a conflict with this ITAR seems like a glaring oversight on someone's or on dozens of people's part. I'm not a policy expert by any stretch, but this is something that could cause serious consequences. One of them being you would have to segregate these soldiers from the rest of their platoon or their company or whatever, from wherever you're allowed to access any of this, like even a radio, which has encrypted communications that are, some of it's Canadian proprietary, much of it is American. You can't even have a signaler in a building that would contain any of this technology. So how are we supposed to function as a cohesive unit when you have to segregate the training and access to any of this technology and schematics of the rest of their peers are using? It just seems like either somebody overlooked this in a really dangerous way, or we are dealing with folks who are so unbelievably ignorant to what's going on. And like, again, it comes down to sort of Occam's razor. Like, is this negligence or malice? And I'm honestly still not sure.
I think you bring up the biggest point there, because we look at the history, the past history with the Canadian military right now. There's you can point to lots of incompetence or malice or whatever you want to look at, but there's a lot of it, right? And now if you look at the potential for problems or conflicts with a mixed military, as you want to call it, because we don't seem to be focused on just getting Canadian nationals. We're now recruiting mercenaries. Dean and I have done that story. We're actually recruiting mercenaries that wouldn't have this access. And then if you match that with the incompetence, I mean, it's going to be really hard to give confidence in the United States to say, oh, you know, like our military, like who's doing the segregation? And then that in itself will likely cause some potential conflict with the people in the military themselves, right? Because they're just like, oh, I should get access, don't get access. And you got a blended military with who knows what loyalties they have into who.
Yeah, it was problematic before I learned about this ITAR thing. And I don't want to take credit for having sort of dug it up either. I actually got a call from I'll call them someone that's currently serving a senior position in the military, called me and said, hey man, like this has kind of landed on a couple people's radar. You might want to take a look at this. So then I started digging into it. I don't dig through Canadian and US military policy documents for fun, as much fun as that sounds. But people in the military are tracking this, and they did put it on my radar, because I'm guessing they wanted someone to bring it under a microscope a little bit more thoroughly. But everything that you just said is relevant. This is, and like I said, an unbelievable oversight. And you can't segregate a signaler from the rest of the signalers, or from the infantry platoon, or from the comms equipment that he had. Like, none of this stuff makes sense. And when they're talking about specifically looking for cyber operations in terms of recruitment, like I certainly hope they're only going to NATO or Five Eye vetted countries for these operators, because there's no chance that these people are going to be able to get their hand on any of the technology requiring individual written authorizations for every single person. Like, this is absolutely insane. Like, it would be faster to, and digress for 1 second here, how did these people get in 3 months? It took me 18 months to get into the military as a Canadian national, having applied with a university degree. It took me the better part of 2 years to get in. Like, what is happening here?
I can tell you, like Ian and I have done the stories where right now it's easier to say, isn't this correct? It's easier to say or not ask a question, because then you don't like the answer. So just don't ask questions as people coming in through immigration or for claiming asylum. So they just don't ask questions. They're just like, yeah, that's good enough, because the paperwork is just too onerous. So it's ridiculous. I'll turn you over to Ian as well for questions.
I would just say as well, if you're absolutely desperate to get the numbers up so that you can have a press conference where you brag about the numbers being up 13% last time, then you're going to loosen the restrictions, aren't you? But something I don't really understand here is the American military has, according to military.com, about 40,000 non-US citizens on active duty. Are they just automatically excluded because they do their own vetting, so they trust themselves, so they don't worry about their own foreign nationals in their military?
That's a good question. Because this information is relatively new to me and the rabbit hole I've gone down is not complete, I'm sure there's information that I don't have, this question being relating to probably one of them. But again, they control the access. So when they choose to bring in foreign nationals, like they would have their own vetting process that'll okay or not okay whoever gets access to it. And the other example that is obvious, I would think, is when US forces go and train. A lot of special operations soldiers do a lot of operations the training operations in foreign countries where they're not necessarily doing anything boots on the ground kinetic wise themselves. They're training foreign countries to operate within, you know what I mean, the levels of TTPs or training tactics, training procedures, whatever it's called. They're trying to get them up to the level that they can sort of be independent, and they would be offering them equipment and policy things, you know what I mean, that would sort of fall in this area. But again, that's up to them to decide. The US government is the one who owns this technology for the most part. And if they want to bring in 40,000 people and authorize them, that's their right to do that. But Canada saying that, oh, we're going to bring in people from Venezuela or Bolivia or whoever, I just made that up, but we still have to look to them. Are they on the approved list? Is each individual person allowed to touch this rocket launcher or blueprint for this building or whatever. So I don't know if that answers your question, but like they do have obviously tens of thousands of people that function in their environment, but that's up to them to come up with their vetting and decide.
Yeah, I expected that, to be honest. I mean, they're obviously gonna trust themselves. This is more about their relationship with other countries, isn't it? But I just think that's an interesting fact about this situation. They would be accused of double standards, wouldn't they? But I guess America's the big boys, and that's kind of how it works. You just have to accept that. But I'd also say we're talking about permanent residence. Unlike in the United States, where it's actually pretty difficult to become a citizen, it takes quite a long time. It's not actually that hard in Canada. It doesn't, like, you can from permanent residency, the citizenship can be 4 years. Could even be less than 4 years if the line's not too long. So just to emphasize how wacky it is really that they've done this. They didn't really need to do this because it's such a quick process if you're a permanent resident. So this was really bending over backwards, I think, wasn't it? But yeah, just on a more practical point, let's imagine the Americans, theoretically, let's say they were really upset and they restricted access to their equipment, their technology. From a sort of soldier's perspective, from an insider's or former insider's perspective, how serious would that be, do you think, to the ability of the armed forces in Canada to operate effectively? Like, could it operate effectively?
I don't think so. Everything that, from personal experience and being deployed operationally in a theater in Iraq, everything we did was enabled by the Americans. Like, it was an American-led mission, an American facilitated compound surrounded by American security. Like, we had our own team that did our own, you know what I mean? We had our own freedom of movement to move around, but all of that was granted because of the Americans. And I'm not going to go into, like, should we have been in Iraq or any of that? Like, I would argue no now, you know what I mean, at this point with all the hindsight, but it's, at the end of the day, everything we do is more or less enabled by the Americans. And this, like I went into it the last one, I'm not going to beat it to death, but we don't have a functioning military without the Americans. Like, this is just the way it is. Half of this, so much of the stuff that we have is because we get it from them or we use it alongside them. Our pilots go down there for training. Our special operations go down there for skydiving, you know what I mean, courses, which I sort of just missed out on towards the end of my career. There's like, there's almost an endless number of things that we do in the US for training or that is enabled by the US military, that if something was to go wrong with this agreement that we have, this special arrangement, like, the Canadian military is going to be in such a bad space, it's going to be hard to fathom how we're going to get out of it.
And on that note, you mentioned about, in the email that you sent us, you mentioned about Five Eyes and how Canada's been censured. The finger's been wagged at Canada. And also, I don't think you mentioned here, but also New Zealand, I believe, has also been told off a couple of times, hasn't it? But could you just explain the importance of that and if you know, how significant that censure was, like how angry the Americans were? Because I presume it was mostly the Americans within the Five Eyes that were upset.
Yeah, there's a new sort of, we'll call it Three Eyes agreement that's called AUKUS. So it's just between Australia, UK, and the US. So Canada has deliberately been excluded from certain levels of intelligence sharing that the Five Eyes have been privileged enough to. So I'll back it up a little bit. So the Five Eyes, Canada, UK, New Zealand, Australia, US, has an unprecedented amount of intelligence sharing that no other countries have the ability to do. So we basically agreed that not everything, but most of the things that we collect within certain silos of exclusion, we will share almost, you know what I mean, unilaterally with each other within that Five Eyes group. Like I said, there's nothing else that exists like this in terms of intelligence sharing in the military in the world. And since Canada has started to sort of not take its security seriously, both, you know what I mean, domestically and how we deal with operations internationally and our participation and all that stuff, the US, like you said, has been reining back our ability to access this. And now with this Three Eyes agreement, like AUKUS, there was a censure recently where another agreement was paused that we have in terms of intelligence and operational access with the US that just happened, I think, in the last couple of months. So like we are on this path of doing potentially irreparable damage with our most important military partner. And this is not a partisan issue. This is not like, oh, I agree with Trump or I agree with Biden or I'm on whatever side of the aisle. Like none of that stuff matters when it comes to protecting the sovereignty of, you know what I mean, North America, which includes Mexico. But we can't operate without them. Like we absolutely need them. We need their money. We need their gear. We need their equipment. We need absolutely everything. The entire world's GPS more or less functions on American satellites. Like Canada can't get a GPS, a 10-figure grid reference for navigation without a US satellite. So if they flip a switch and turn us off, like what are we going to do? We're in real trouble if the US starts taking us aside and wagging the finger more sternly and saying, like, you can't bring in Chinese nationals into your military. I don't know if that's happened, but it's just an example. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, it does. And it's just quite shocking to hear it put in those terms. But I mean, when you were saying that, I was also thinking, would the Americans, would they ever really do this to Canada? Do you think? I know this is like grand strategy sort of thing, but would they ever do that? Because they would almost be weakening themselves then, wouldn't they? Because it's like we're on top of them, literally. Like they wouldn't really want us to fall out of their grip like that, would they?
I don't think it would ever be a black and white issue of turning off or on, like we're all out or all in, but they definitely could start ratcheting back what we have access to, or there's dozens and dozens of foreign postings of senior officers that are in the US on US installations that are in senior positions, you know what I mean, in command of US troops, either directly or indirectly. So like, it just depends on, I guess, what level they want to ratchet this back to, where those postings could disappear. You know what I mean? Operational team deployments, you know what I mean, might start to thin out or disappear even more than they already have. So it probably wouldn't be a sort of here today, gone tomorrow thing, but it could slowly start to disappear where they see us as a liability, which is more or less already happening. So it's just kind of striking that the senior leadership in Canada are not paying attention to this, or if they are, they're not really caring. And just to give a contextual example of a personal experience, I applied to the Australian military back in 2016, like very early in my career in the Canadian military, just because my sister had moved out to Australia. I've been to Australia. Like it's a nice place. It's very similar culturally to Canada, and I thought that the Australian military might be a good place to end up, and one of our allied partners. So there does exist lateral, they call it the overseas lateral transfer scheme at the time. So you can move from one Commonwealth military into another one. They recruit sort of amongst each other. That's common. That's always happened. But what's different about what's happening now is they're bringing in people from non-NATO countries, non-Commonwealth countries, and potentially security violating problematic countries. So this is why it's different than anything that's been done before, and why it's so weird and troubling that they're not taking this seriously, and they didn't really forecast this coming. I think in the next maybe year or two, we'll see how this ends up, whether these people get their hands on certain piece of equipment or not. But I'd love to know where these folks actually all came from and what positions they ended up taking.
That's, I mean, their philosophy basically is that it would be a kind of form of prejudice or something like that to discriminate between an Australian and somebody from, I don't know, Eritrea or China or whatever it is. Like the very act of doing that is a problem, isn't it? In the worldview of the people that govern this country, I would contend.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I've got some more questions here, but I don't know if Jim's sort of itching to get in here. Is there something you want to ask, Jim?
Well, I was going to change the subject, so you keep going on this one then.
Well, I was also going to change the subject. So.
Well, okay, I'll go then. The F-35s. We're hand-wringing on those F-35s, and there's been more talk now about, like we're supposed to buy those 88 F-35As. I mean, this has been going on since Harper. And then, Trudeau came in, said no, they're too expensive. And then 2023 said yes. And then now we're talking about Gripens. And obviously our Air Force is way too small to carry 2 jets. In this political decision, is in your view, is this just more nonsense? Like if we end up with, because there are some F-35s on order right now that will be coming in. So we're going to have F-35s. Are we going to have Gripens? Is our military big enough to do both from a cost perspective and a training perspective and just logistics?
Good question. I'm trying to think of how I could answer this diplomatically, but also accurately. So, short answer is no. Like, is our military big enough to do this, to utilize this to its full potential now? No, but maybe with the purchasing agreements and, you know what I mean, and the procurement of these incredible state-of-the-art sort of technology, we could recruit more people that would be willing to do this as a career, so it would sort of justify it retroactively, is maybe the best way I can say it. We send a lot of pilots down to the US to train on US aircraft now. Canada's known for having some of the best pilots in the world. Like, compared to the size of our military, we're definitely overrepresented in terms of pilot ability, pilot skills, compared to our size of anybody. Like, we have the smallest Air Force and Navy. It's almost non-existent compared to other countries. But we do produce very, very skilled pilots that are known internationally for being very good. So I don't think that we have the capacity to utilize all this equipment now, but we could easily market ourselves as needing, you know what I mean, more pilots to use this stuff. So I think that would be, and it's insane what you said about how long this has been going on. They've just been kicking this can down the road to acquire this technology and the planes and the Griffins and everything that we need. But we were able to import Chinese EVs like overnight, you know what I mean? And now we have 50,000 or however many Chinese cars.
Put some wings on them.
It's incredible just how inefficient the procurement and all this stuff actually is, and me having just such a small glimpse into it back in 20 and 21. But it's I hope that answers your question. I don't think we're able to use it to its full extent now because we don't really have the manpower, but I think if you build it, they will come, kind of thing. Hopefully,
just the amount of training resources you need, if you have two types of jets, obviously that you know, like parts supply, it's expensive. If you have a large military like the Americans, obviously you can absorb, like, you know, like diversity of equipment, but, you know, like it's not like you're buying a couple of Chinese EVs and a few Fords and a Chevy. They're completely different, right? They're very technical things and very expensive.
I wouldn't be surprised if basically all of the new F-35 specifically would be mostly housed and sort of operated in terms of the training and maintenance stuff on US bases. Like, it would make sense to have everybody living down on some US base that has dozens of these things, and that's where all the training and operational maintenance would happen until we become quote unquote self-sufficient, and then we would probably move them up there and repost all they'd leave their nice California posting and go up to Cold Lake, Alberta, and have a bit of a culture shock there. But yeah, it just, once again, we would be so reliant on the US and buying their tech and having them teach us how to use it and maintain it, that we need to deal with this relationship more carefully and not make stupid mistakes.
I guess the real question there is, does it frustrate you as a former CAF captain that a lot of the decisions are being made not as what's right for the battlefield, but what's politically correct in the moment and like a populist decision?
Yeah, it's actually really disturbing, and it's what causes a lot of folks that I shouldn't say a lot, but a handful of folks that I know just sort of reach out to me and say, "Have you seen this?" or "Take a look at this," or the morale is plummeting because this decision was made, like tampons in the men's bathroom. And then you've got General Wayne Eyre going on the record saying, if you don't agree with the direction that the CAF is going, then you're a Russian asset. It's like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? It's become quite literally the virtue signaling capital of the world, where military leaders who are supposed to be in charge of sending people to go kill other people are more concerned with optics and their legacy projects than they are with commanding troops. Like, it's super disturbing, depressing, and demoralizing.
Yeah, if you look at it from that perspective, like, you know, you want to get killed. If you're going to get killed on the battlefield, you'd like it to be with somebody, a male soldier wearing a tampon in an electric tank, than, you know, somebody driving a diesel tank. You know, it's just nonsensical. But I'll turn you back to Ian, because like, some of it's just like frustratingly maddening.
Yeah, it's a good laugh though, isn't it? At least it gives us a bit of comedy. Just on the Chinese EVs thing, since you mentioned that, I was intending to bring that up. Last time you were on, I mean, if anybody doesn't know, you were in intelligence, weren't you? That was your area.
For 2 years, yeah. It wasn't my trade, but I was in a posting, yeah.
Okay, 2 years. Last time you were on, we talked about Israel and how they'd, I think it was the Iran thing, wasn't it? How they'd like hacked into street cameras and things, cameras that are supposed to monitor traffic or whatever, and they'd done that to build up a profile of the people in charge so that they could kill them, so that they could hit them with the airstrikes. And just that kind of, I don't know what you would call that in terms of intelligence gathering, but very sort of creative and using what's in front of you. With the Chinese EVs, today we talked about a story. I think it's a CBC, or so, I can't remember who it is, but somebody got hold of a document from Public Safety Canada where they warn about the Chinese EVs, and they said, and that, they said, well, they don't explicitly, but it's like in the hands of a hostile power, this data could be quite useful for tracking people. I'm just interested in your take on that. I guess it's on a more practical level. Like, what could they do with that? Because we can conclude inevitably, can't we, that the Chinese state, if they want this information, they're going to get it. That tends to be how it works with Chinese businesses. What could they do with it exactly with this data?
So probably one of my biggest shocks when being sort of read into the cyber environment, that I was a intelligence analyst, my bailiwick was cyber, was learning just how compromised and dangerous it is to have any device on you. Like anytime you go into a SCIF in the military, or SCIF stands for Special Compartmented Information Facility. So anywhere you go that has sort of top secret or above conversations and information and networking, you're not allowed to bring your phone. Like there's a very good reason. You can't turn your phone off and then bring it in. You can't put it in a Faraday bag and then bring it in. Like you are not allowed to bring a phone into these environments at all because of how susceptible to compromise it is. So imagine driving around in a giant Chinese phone that has GPS, cameras, signals receiving and sending capability to bouncing it off cell tower. And all of this stuff can be done without any knowledge of the operator of the vehicle. Like there can be code written into the background where it's just pinging cell towers and then it's relaying information directly to the CCP or some CCP controlled organization in China. Like whatever private corporations they have are basically the same as the CCP. So if they're saying, oh, this data is only housed off-site on a private facility, like, there's no difference. Like they are one and the same. So I interviewed Gary Clement a few months ago, who's a legendary RCMP officer who's gone dove in very deep into the weeds of Chinese infiltration in Canada, CCP infiltration in Canada, and the corruption correlating. And I asked him about the Chinese EVs, and his words were like, we're importing literal spy devices to use in Canada. And I think there's probably zero chance that these will not be used against us in some capacity. Like, are they going to be monitoring us 24/7? You know what I mean? Facial recognition and like I don't know. If I told you exactly what the risk was, I'd be lying to you. But I don't think there's any chance that these cars are going to be deployed across Canada, and some of the information, if not a lot of the information, is not going to get back to the CCP in some capacity. And the fact that we fast-tracked this and we're letting it happen in broad daylight is really quite stunning, and really shows that where the Liberals and Carney's priorities are with regard to just selling us out to the highest bidder with no regard to the follow-on consequences. And it's so dark, and I can't imagine that this is something that is going to go well. Like it's unbelievably short-sighted and stupid.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to know how to clean it up as well, because there's going to be thousands of these vehicles, we assume, on the roads. I mean, you can't issue a recall and all of those things. I mean, what a mess. But I would
Can I ask you something real quick? Like, do you remember when everybody became sort of paranoid that your devices are listening to you? There's sort of countless sort of anecdotal examples everybody probably has of having a conversation about something innocuous, you know what I mean? Like wine corks or something, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I talked to my next door neighbor about this brand new wine cork that I was interested in, or I want to start corking my own wine. And then all of a sudden in your feed, you start seeing ads for wine bottles or wine corks, something like that. And then for years and years, the tech companies told us, oh, don't worry, like we're not listening to you. Having spent time in cyber intelligence, I can tell you with 100% absolute certainty, your devices listen to you. They gather data on you. They aggregate this data somewhere and have a file on you, whether it's, you know what I mean, your Alexa, your iPhone, your whatever, anything that's capable of sending or receiving data that's connected to a Wi-Fi or directly through an LTE or 5G connection. These devices are listening to you and watching you and building a profile on you. And that is exactly what these cars are going to do.
Well, there's like memes, or there's not going to call them memes, but there's lots of posts on the internet where people like Mark Zuckerberg have photographs taken of themselves in their own personal space, and they've got like bits of tape over the webcam and stuff like that. It's like, if anybody's going to know, it'll be people like that. But also, like, because people are so, I'm not just talking about Israel for the because I'm obsessed with Israel, but people are obsessed with Israel. They talk about Israel all the time, and that gives you a window. They're probably considered to be the best sort of spies in the world, aren't they? That gives you a window into what's possible, and certainly they've shown that access to video, audio, and everything. I think that's pretty much out in the public now, isn't it? So yeah, terrifying. But I would just say as well, on this Public Safety Canada memo, so it's an internal memo that's somehow that somebody's got hold of it. I can't actually remember who it is, but it's out now into the public. And it says Canadians are advised to be vigilant, or, people who buy these cars should be vigilant. But that's not really adequate, is it? Because like with the thing in Iran, those traffic cameras didn't belong to the people who were targeted. So it's not just the owner of the car, because if you're an important scientist or something like that in Canada that, let's just say, China wants to do something to, or turn, or whatever it is, if your commute to work is very similar to a commute by somebody with a Chinese EV, let's say, like that's intel, isn't it? That's valuable. So it's not just about the owner of the car; it's about everybody around it, surely.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It doesn't have to be the owner, operator, or manufacturer of the component material, you know what I mean, in the device, in this case, a car. It is susceptible to third-party intervention. So I try not to just broadcast constant paranoia, but all of these things are so susceptible to compromise. And it's mind-blowing that we brought in tens of thousands of these things thinking, oh, you know what I mean? Like, the CCP is totally doing this out of the goodness of their hearts and of good faith. And hopefully there's no compromise, but it's exactly what you just said. So that's a good insight, that it doesn't matter necessarily who's driving it or where it came from, although those things definitely do matter. There's the third party risk of somebody intercepting something along the way. And that could have been the plan all along. You know what I mean? There could be some type of stingray, what they call them in law enforcement, device that mimics a cell phone tower that's nearby that can just scrape everything from inside that car or any device or whatever. So yeah, man, you're bang on with the technology being not necessarily offered by the person who's trying to do the nefarious activity, but you're just leaving yourself susceptible to that compromise merely by having it. It's something as simple as the CCTV camera example in Iran.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I assume Chinese EV, because it's true of Tesla, they have cameras facing out, don't they? So it's kind of like, I can't think of anything better for surveillance. It's perfect, isn't it? It's completely innocuous, driven by an unrelated party, like a civilian. And if you can have access to that, I mean, it's like a spy's dream, I imagine.
Yeah, so Tesla, just to jump in on the Tesla thing, China did ban Teslas from military compounds, housing complexes, and all kinds of places. Because Teslas, you're right, have 8 cameras that face outward, and they're recording all the time. They're absolutely recording all the time. And they were banned. China banned the Teslas in those areas and had them turn off the data and stuff like that too, right? So,
did I bring up on the last episode the Huawei NDHQ relocation about 7-8 years ago?
No.
So Huawei essentially, for those who don't know, Huawei essentially bankrupted Nortel in Canada. Like, Nortel was a Canadian company that was operating at the time with some of the most proprietary sort of software in computers that was purchasable, you know what I mean, through retail environments for you and I to have in our computer. Like, I remember Nortel Inside or whatever the advertisements were. So Nortel was a huge company with very advanced proprietary technology. And Huawei penetrated their security and performed essentially corporate espionage to steal their IP and come out with very, very similar technology at a fraction of the cost, essentially bankrupting Nortel. So why this matters is because Nortel's headquarters was in Ottawa. So when the geniuses that decided to move 101 Colonel By, which is next to the Reno Center in Ottawa, where the old NDHQ was, so National Defense Headquarters, they moved it into the Nortel facility. So there was such poor planning involved in this, even though after Huawei had been sort of outed for stealing the IP from Nortel, we still moved our most top secret conversations into the same building. And then retroactively, somebody red flagged it and said, well, wasn't this the place where Huawei stole all that IP from Nortel? And then they literally had to gut the entire building to sweep it for listening devices and IP stealing devices. And it gets really into the weeds of how small or how sort of innocuous looking a device can be, even though it can harvest everything that's nearby it. And they claim that they didn't find anything when they did this sweep, but I think that's BS personally. But this is kind of the lack of, again, Occam's razor, malice, or stupidity here. Like, we moved our entire military headquarters into a building that had known to be victim of espionage. And this Chinese EV import thing seems to be the exact same thing, kind of wrapped up in a different bow. And it's like we never learn a lesson. We just keep repeating this. It's the definition of insanity, like repeating the same behavior, expecting a different result.
It seems like it's the same characters making the same decisions. And like we talked about, incompetence meeting opportunity, right? Incompetence meets opportunity. And then you have, a security risk. One of the things there is Alex Carr-Palantir. It turns out Canada, because obviously he's a bad guy, right? Because he's, listed by much of the left-leaning media as this far-right extremist. Palantir is one of the most important software companies in the world when it comes to surveillance and or military application. And Canada's been secretly, I guess, buying this software.
Yeah, so I agree that Palantir is an important company, and not everything they do, should necessarily be painted with the same brush as a big evil tech overlord. But this secret agreement that we had with CANSOF, so Canadian Special Operations Forces, that houses JTF2 and CSOR and CJIRU and 427 and all these guys who do the kind of secret squirrely stuff that doesn't really make the news. It's very interesting to note that secret agreement was inked back in 2020 and then revamped all the way through 2025. So when I emailed you that story this morning, I only came across that story this morning, so I haven't really had time to dive into it, but I did reach out to a source that I'll say that spent a lot more time in the military than me in a very secret sort of squirrel area, and asked, what are your thoughts on this? And the first thing I got back was, this is almost certainly related to the spying and surveillance that went on during the convoy. And in the words of this person, that when you do that data scrape, you fly this airplane over this crowd and you do your data scrape, you do need some kind of sophisticated sort of aggregating technology to identify all those people and start categorizing them and then scraping their social media to develop these sort of risk profiles. And this just turns Canada into 1984, in my opinion, where now we have these right-wing, extreme, risk people that the Canadian military is pretending that are an actual risk above the Bishnoi gang that has 1,000 guns or whatever. They're writing letters to police forces and extorting people and committing violent acts of terrorism in Canada. But the scariest people are the people at the convoy, eating hot dogs and eating free chicken noodle soup in minus 20 degrees. But I sent that story because I'm starting to connect dots maybe that aren't there. But when I'm listening to people that have way more time in the military than me, with way more experience in these environments, tell me that, in their opinion, this is something that is at least somewhat potentially related to that data scrape that we talked about last time. Like this brings us to a place where we're operating in very, very gray and illegal areas, domestically in Canada, on Canadian people, warrantless searches and seizures, that kind of thing. Like, this is a very scary, slippery slope that we're on. And I'm not really sure what to make of this yet. I'll have to do a little bit more digging, but I did want to bring that up, and I did email you that this morning.
Well, I remember you want to plug you got a YouTube channel, your hat there. You want to plug your channel there?
Yeah. True Patriot Love, tplmedia.ca. You can find us there. Thank you for giving me some airtime again. This has been interesting.
And then, you're going to have to send a hat to me and Ian next time we're on, so we can all wear that True Patriot. Yeah,
I'll get them sent out for sure. Thanks for having me back on. It's.
Do you have any final questions, Ian? Do you have any questions for Brian?
I've got mountains of questions.
But I don't
want to impinge on your time. I just want to You know, we hear about foreign interference all the time. We were talking about China earlier. We hear that term foreign interference, don't we? Which I just think is like, it's such a euphemism, isn't it? That just sucks out any sort of meaning from the words. The words just don't mean anything anymore, do they? I was just wondering if you could sort of, off the top of your head, I guess, fill us in, like, what kind of espionage operations that you're aware of do the Chinese and other sort of hostile countries, if you want to call it that? What sort of things do they do in Canada? Because it's not all just like listening devices and things, is it? I mean, there's quite a lot of, well, they buy people, don't they? They bribe people from the professions and in politics even. But I mean, I'm sure there's even more dastardly things than that going on. So I'm very interested to have your insight.
So you made a good connection there in identifying that foreign interference is just another word for espionage. So it's whitewashing the term of espionage or spying that's being done by sort of state-backed actors. And a really good book on this subject is called Willful Blindness from a journalist named Sam Cooper, who did a very deep and detailed dive of how many politicians, senior levels of law enforcement, you know what I mean, lawyers, and just runs the gamut of how many people have been compromised by CCP actors or triad or cartel activity in Canada. Like, it is absolutely mind-bending to dive into the folks that are very obviously taking money or benefiting somehow, and then the RCMP will do an investigation into the wrongdoing, and shockingly, they never find any wrongdoing when they investigate themselves. Like, I don't know how to, like, I'm trying to answer your question, but the level of espionage in this country and compromising of senior people is almost at a level that I can't fathom. It's like I mentioned before, I interviewed Gary Clement and asked him, like, why is there never anyone with any balls in a senior position in the RCMP to go after all these obviously compromised people? And everybody is just sort of scared to do it. I think that they live under the cloud of fear of the senior Liberal government. And they basically, the PMO sort of pulls these strings. And this is my interpretation, like, this is me editorializing here. I just think that these folks are operating under more or less a cloud of fear of the consequences of them exposing any of this. But to give you an example, back to the original question, the Vancouver model of money laundering through housing and casinos and all this other stuff that's been well documented since sort of the early 2000s, late 90s. Like, there's a model for laundering residential property money through Vancouver organized crime, CCP triad activity that's called the Vancouver model. In the world, it's called this. You know what I mean? And it's at a level where hundreds of billions of dollars per year is going on and has been going on through Vancouver, and it's spread to the rest of the country to the tune of what Sam estimates could be up to $1 trillion of money laundered. And people wonder, so what are the downstream effects of that? So we have very obviously a housing and affordability crisis in Canada because of the super inflated values of homes. Well, how did we get there? Well, it certainly didn't help by laundering hundreds of billions of dollars through these artificially inflated real estate volumes. So, like, what kind of espionage is going on here?
It was actually run through casinos, like BC government casinos, to top it off, right?
Yeah, and they did the investigations, and obviously there was obviously no wrongdoing found, and you know what I mean? I think they scaled it back for a little while before they just ratcheted it right back up. But the level of espionage and grift in Canada is so bad that we have artificially inflated homes across the entire country because of how much drug and human trafficking and just illicit funds are flowing through this country. And I continue to speak to Sam and Gary and Scott McGregor, and hopefully soon I'll speak to Dennis Molinaro. And like, all these folks have written really good books about this. And I would urge anybody listening to this, pick up the book Willful Blindness by Sam Cooper. It's unbelievable. It will highlight everything I'm saying times 100. If I can expand a little bit on the original, like, how bad is the espionage in Ottawa? We got briefings when I first sort of arrived there, having the levels of clearances that I was about to achieve. They warned us that there was anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 plus foreign agents on the ground in Ottawa conducting active surveillance. So what that means, I don't know. Like, no one ever approached me and offered me, you know what I mean, money or anything like that. But there has been cases of Canadians being arrested for being approached or being compromised in some way. But there's thousands of people, very likely in Ottawa, that are conducting these operations, whether individually as part of a greater scheme, to get compromise on Canadian people or Canadian senior officers or whatever. So this is not just something in the movies. This is happening every single day, and people need to sort of wake up and not cozy us up to China like they're our greatest ally somehow, as Carney's walking us down this path.
And was it, from your experience, was it like mostly China, or China is just the most competent and most active, or is it also other countries?
Honestly, I don't know. I would think that they're probably one of the most competent. China for sure, Russia, Iran to some extent. Like, those are the teams that I sort of work the closest with, and just some of their abilities, especially in the cyber realm, was just unbelievable. Even Iran, like cyber capability wise, North Korea cyber capability wise to some extent. Like China has done penetration testing on Canadian infrastructure. So like they send cyber attacks to Canadian infrastructure all the time. Like this happens pretty regularly. And the fact that we're cozying up to them as they're our, new greatest ally, like the US is not doing cyber attacks on Canadian infrastructure. So I don't understand why we're heading in this direction, but this is something that we need to sort of wake up to. And I'm glad you're asking these questions, because I feel like a lot of people are not paying attention to this.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was that report not so long ago about how China, like per capita, China devotes more resources to Canada than any other country. We've talked about this often, Jim and myself, and I think part of the reason, I hate to say it, but I think part of the reason is that it's probably like a good training ground. It's probably like it's like the easy level, it's easy mode before you go on to a harder espionage job. And that is a terrible indictment, really, isn't it? But I don't want to keep you too long, so I'm going to ask you one slightly mischievous question now. In your experience, to your knowledge, do the Americans do much in Canada? Because there's so many, it's like whispered about and spoken about, isn't it, that the Americans have been involved in like trying to get to stop Canada getting its oil out because that would benefit the United States and things like that, like getting it to the Pacific, I mean, and that they sponsored environmental groups. This is like embedded, I think, in Canadian culture. It's a topic of conversation. But do you know anything about that? And the Americans,
Honestly,
trying to
I don't want to speak to something I don't know, but something I do know is that it's so going back to sort of the convoy example, or that sort of heightened 2020 to 2022 period where I think a lot of Canadians were kind of on edge. A lot of them still are, but so there's sort of strict guidelines of what CSIS can do in Canada, what the RCMP can do in Canada, what D&D can do in Canada. Like there's very, very strict rules that don't leave a lot of gray for collecting on Canadians in Canada. So what they will do, I've learned this through reaching out to a few people to figure out what's going on. So for instance, the RCMP and CSIS can't do certain things domestically on Canadians. So what they'll do is they'll post an RCMP or CSIS person just across the border to upstate New York, where they can work sort of hand in hand with American intelligence, American police agencies. And through, as sort of a proxy, they can now reach back across the border and spy on Canadians, gather intelligence on Canadians, because they're not doing it on Canadian soil. So they're doing it from 5 minutes across the border in a U.S., facility, and not the NYPD, because that's New York City, but it's some New York police affiliate that's up there, maybe a state trooper or whatever. But they can now reach back across and start collecting on Canadians. And this is how a not zero amount of intelligence during stuff like the convoy and other people were sort of compromised in this period. Are they organizing destabilizing events in Canada? I don't know. I don't think so. Is it possible? Sure. But we definitely do work with American agencies to do what would be considered gray area collecting on Canadians if I think an order comes down from the PMO or somebody, that says we don't like these right-wing extremist people, convoying or whatever they deem to be the latest threat. But that's probably a bad answer to your question, but to be honest, I can't say that destabilizing efforts are happening through, because I don't know.
That's really interesting, though. Even though, no, I really respect that you say that you're not an expert in that area, so you don't want to hold forth on it. I think that more people should do that. It's a very good way to behave. But I'm very fascinated in what you said there, that the Canadian state, is going to a foreign country to work with foreign agents of that foreign state to spy on and disrupt and menace Canadian citizens. Is that not like treason or something? I mean, what's the word to describe that? To get into bed with a foreign power on foreign soil to, I can't think of the word, but let's say at least spy on Canadian citizens. But I think it's more than that, isn't it? That sounds a little bit.
I think it's always been
happening.
I just learned about it recently, so it's kind of shocking to me, but not really. But yeah, I like, you could call it treason, sure, but I don't know. It's just crazy.
Well,
I just think we live in 1984.
But that's the state committing, almost like committing treason against the people, isn't it? I mean, blimey. Yeah, very, very interesting. But yeah, that's I'll stop now. I'll stop with infinity questions. I'll pass you over to Jim.
I've got a couple. Ian and I did the story on the subs last week. There was a Korean sub, South Korean sub that was in Esquimalt in the naval base there. And Canada had 4 submarines. I mean, that's what's listed there. I think 1 is active. We only have the largest coastline of any nation. And we have one active sub, which is diesel, right? Because you don't want to get killed by that diesel sub anyway, right? Because it's diesel. So we have 1 diesel sub, and we bought them in a UK garage sale back in the 1980s, I believe. So the media did ask a sailor. They asked a question, just like, because they got to go inside the South Korean sub, which is a diesel sub as well. And he said, "What's it like in there?" He said, "Well, it's like getting a Tesla when you've been driving a 1999 Hyundai." Right? So, it's kind of like, it's sad that that's one of the most important parts of our Navy. And if you don't have a good Navy, you really don't have a military, right? I mean, the Navy is so important. And we have 1 operational sub to guard, it's big, right? I think it's 3,000. I can't remember how many, like the coastline is. Maybe Ian can look it up real quick. But it's a massive coastline that we're to guard. And it's a 2-parted question. One is in the United States, their military is split up into branches, like definable branches, like more so like, you got the Marines, you got the Army, you got the Navy and the Air Force and all that. In Canada, is it mainly under the CAF, like the Canadian Armed Forces? Is there like distinction, or is it easy to move between the different branches?
There's what's called purple trades. So you have a trade that could be in any element. So like, I was a military police officer towards the end of my career, so that's considered a purple trade. So you can be in the Army, Navy, Air Force, CANSOFCON, like those elements are all sort of separate, but you can do military policing within any of them. It just depends on what kind of dress uniform you have, and administratively, like, it changes things a little bit, but not in the execution of your job, but your postings are different. We still do have those specific elements. Like we don't have Navy pilots. Like the US has Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine pilots. But if you're a pilot in Canada, you are only in the Air Force. Same as if you're a sailor, if you have a sailor trade, you are only in the Navy. The fact that we have 1 operational sub is, I didn't know we had only 1 operational sub. That's pretty sad. Some of my best friends to this day
from 1980. That we bought used, by the way. It was a used sub in 1980.
Some of my best friends to this day are some guys that I knew from the Navy, and they're both the best and crustiest guys that you'll ever meet, just because their stories of living on these vessels for months and months on end turns them just into angry men. They're great dudes and they have great stories, but they would be a perfect guest to talk about just how sort of dilapidated and dysfunctional these vessels actually are. They'll send it out, and then sort of immediately it'll have some kind of leak or mechanical problem, and it's got to come back, or they get stranded at some port somewhere. And I've just heard so many of these stories, and our equipment is so just pathetic and outdated.
Yeah, when I was living in Edmonton, my neighbors were working in the Mayo Air Base there. He was a flight engineer for the Chinook helicopters, and she worked in the accounting office, like she was administration. And I've been on base there, and he said, like, this job, we don't do a lot of work because we don't even take these things up when it's raining. I was just like, okay.
Yeah,
so in Canada, just like, you got a call to action. Is it raining? We're not going.
Whereas in the infantry, you don't do anything unless it is raining.
What is the strongest part of our military right now? Because obviously the Navy's in dire straits with 1 operational sub. And I think we have a destroyer. I toured Esquimalt a long time ago. We don't have a lot in as far as a Navy goes anymore. And then our Air Force, I think we're down to 40 operational jets, I believe, the last time I heard. Like not many of the, and they're old, right? They're CF-18s. And then we're grounding the Snowbirds, and then which are just a demonstration thing. And then, so that leaves our infantry. How are they comparatively? I know that they have to catch rides a lot of times. We did those stories, and if they're trying to do like exercises somewhere, either catching ride with the Americans or commercial aircraft to get to different destinations. Where are we at?
I think the Canadian infantry is the best soldier in the world, in my opinion. Like I would put a trained infanteer corporal, master corporal and above against a Navy SEAL any day of the week. Like they are very capable soldiers, especially dismounted units, you know what I mean? Guys that are never taking a ride on a LAV or a TAPV or any of those vehicles that sort of the mounted infantry will move soldiers around on. Like if you have a sort of ranger, pathfinder, recce qualified sniper, like this guy can do anything and he can function in any environment, in any climate. And they're just unbelievable. And the best of the best typically move on to CANSOFCOM. So they end up being in JTF2 or CSOR, CGIRO 427, any one of the sort of special operations branches, which have very sort of considerable effects compared to the size that we have. Like we only have, maybe I shouldn't even say how many we have, like it'd be estimate, but maybe I shouldn't talk about that. But we don't have a lot of these folks around, but they do have very sort of profound effect capabilities when they're installed amongst our allies. But like I would put our infantry up against any soldier in the world. Like I think we produce the best infantry soldier on the planet. I did the training. It's very hard. It's no joke. Like it is not for weak people. And yeah, like that's the best that we have, in my opinion. I'm very biased because I did it. We don't really have enough tanks to produce the best armored officers. Like we don't have a ton of functional operational tanks. Yeah, like that's not saying the armored officers aren't good. I'm sure they are. I didn't work with a ton, but yeah, the infantry is the best we have. I think they're just like the blood, sweat, and tears of our military.
So it all comes down to like what that sounds like. It comes down to equipment and lack of equipment, right? I mean, that's what we seem to be lacking, right? We're lacking in the Navy. We're lacking in the Air Force. Lacking in the like the armored division, and we're lacking in pistols, as you pointed out earlier. Right? So
I think they might have them now. This was a 5 year ago problem. I'm sure. Hopefully they sorted.
They got other problems now. They don't have. We did a story just recently. They don't have no rucksacks. They need you to turn in your rucksacks. They need you to turn in your tactical vests when you're because there's a shortage of that. I mean, how can we have shortage of that? It doesn't make any sense, especially when we're supposedly met our spending targets. Makes no sense.
It's like I said, some of the guys that have been in for a while that have seen the transition from the very capable sort of Afghan Iraq days to where we are now, and they're really struggling. And I get calls from these fellas relatively regularly where a lot of them are either on their way out or they've already got out, and it's kind of hard to watch. It's just, yeah, it's weird.
As usual, thank you, Brian. I'm sure we'll have you on again. You're a great guest, and you bring so much knowledge. And next time we'll all be wearing a hat, eh?
I'll get them sent out. Thank you for having me back on. I like being here. You guys are great.
Awesome, and we appreciate you as well. Thank you, Brian. And we'll let you go here, and Ian and I will wrap up the really big show for the rest of the day there. That was good.
You're asking about how big Canada's coast is, and you said 3. I think we can say 3,000.
Yeah, it's got to be way more.
The answer is 151,000 miles, which is 243,000 kilometers.
That's what makes more sense, because 3,000 kilometers, that's like driving to like Winnipeg or something like that.
Yeah. That's absolutely insane, isn't it?
One
like
fast sub.
That
is one fast sub. It can go from all around, like, it's crazy, right? I mean,
a lot of that's frozen though, isn't it? It's
not frozen underneath though. The sub goes underneath ice there.
If
well,
you've got ice
maybe
breakers,
not ours. Hey, maybe not ours. Maybe ours is more of a sub that stays on the top of the water. Sub sometimes. Sub. It's a sub. Wow. We're back tomorrow. I don't know if we have anybody booked for tomorrow yet. Well, we have Renee tomorrow. Renee with Beyond the Ballot. tomorrow. I'm sure we'll dig into the BC politics. I'm sure by the end of the day, there'll be heaps of stuff coming out of the BC NDP on Carrie Lynn Findlay. And I'm sure the dance, I'm waiting for that to drop when they go after her for the dance and label her as Trump. They already did the Trump thing though, right? So
Yeah, and they're not going to stop. That's going to be, get used to that.
So she might as well own it. She might as well just start playing YMCA at the beginning of that'll be her acknowledgement. She'll just, I'd like to acknowledge YMCA and just bust a move. Just own it. Just stick it in their face. I would do it.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just answering Diana there. Diana said, who's got the largest coastline in the world? Canada.
That's us. That's us.
Yep. Largest coastline, tiniest navy. Not quite. No, I think our navy's bigger than Mongolia's.
Who has any gold reserves? Who doesn't have any gold reserves? That's us.
Our gold reserves are in the ground, Jim. Didn't you hear? Just like oil. Our reserves are in the ground.
We don't get those out. We're just keeping them there, keeping them there trapped. Brian's a great guest. Great guest. Some of the stuff he shares is crazy, crazy good. We'll have to get that guy, that Gary Clement. We'll have to see. I'll ask Brian to see if he can connect him with us. And we've been always talking about getting Sam Cooper on too. We should do that, right? He does so much good work here in Canada for Chinese interference.
Yeah, I need to read his book, to be honest, to be worthy.
Are you through that values book yet, or are you just?
Oh,
I have a copy of that book too, and
I've
done a couple of chapters, and I'm just like, whoa, wow.
Values, I mean, yeah. I mean, the sort of the garbled economics lesson at the beginning it's hard to get through. But
Jiminy,
it gets worse.
Rupturing the show.
Much, much worse. That's the best part of the book.
Well, let's do one last thing. Let's do one last pitch. We would like to invite Mark Carney on the show. And what's his name of his girl? Audra? Is it Audra?
Oh, yeah.
Audrey?
Yeah.
Audrey?
Well, we would say Audrey.
Audrey.
But she has her own ways.
And then obviously, even if one of his minions want to come on, Jolie, look at you, I'll even try to learn to speak French. And Francois, open invitation. Everybody.
Imagine that. Francois-Philippe Champagne.
He'd be so good.
We are facing some headwinds. You say we're in a recession, but have you seen the headwinds?
We promise that Ian will do the impersonation of you during the whole interview.
Just out of respect.
Yeah. Anyway, that's our show. We appreciate you. Share this far and wide. Get truth out there. And come back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. PST, every weekday morning. Bring some friends. Have watch parties. Bring people that are like kind of lost their minds, like they've gone full in on the religion, and make them watch it. Just make them watch it, and then ask them to point out the lies. And then provide facts on those things. They won't be able to do it. Mark Miller would be great on the show. Mark Holland would be. They need to answer questions. Holland, Freeland, Trudeau. They're selling books, for God's sakes. Maybe we should reach out to Freeland. Maybe she wants to sell some books on the show. Christy, come sell some books.
We do a lot of free advertising for values.
Yeah, that's right. We probably sold a few of those books here. All right, that's it. We'll let you go. Time for a sausage roll. Cheers. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. PST. Thanks for watching The Really Big Show.